meeting to order, and today is really our first meeting with external witnesses on pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2018 budgets. So in the first hour and a half, we have 6 witnesses. Welcome, folks. And I know most of you, I'm not sure of all, I'm looking on my iPad here, have sent us briefs, and we certainly appreciate having received those briefs, and we do know a few things have changed since August. So we'll start with the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada, Mr. Beauregard, Vice President, Regulatory Affairs. Mark?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to join you today. My name is Mark Beauregard. I'm the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada. I'm a professional engineer and business person, and I've spent over 30 years in the Canadian aerospace industry. AIAC member companies manufacture aeronautical and space products, and they engage in aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul. We contribute over $28 billion to the economy each year and help to employ well over 200,000 people. Over 80% of the aerospace industry's goods and services are exported, and much of this is for civil applications. Our industry complies with a vast regime of safety standards and regulations designed to ensure that air travel remains safe, reliable, and sustainable. Canada has long been a leader in aviation regulations worldwide. Transport Canada's Civil Aviation Branch, or TCCA, is known worldwide as one of the big 4 regulatory bodies, along with the U.S. FAA, Europe's EASA, and Brazil's ANAC. TCCA's certifications and approvals make it easier for Canadian manufacturers and service providers to do business in foreign jurisdictions, thereby increasing the sector's global competitiveness. A TCCA certification or approval, with its worldwide recognition, is the final and essential step in the innovation value stream for Canadian civil aviation products and services. Recognizing the importance of the aerospace industry to the Canadian economy, the federal government, provincial governments, and municipalities have long invested directly and indirectly in the Canadian aerospace sector. The federal government's efforts to support innovation through programs such as the Innovation Supercluster Initiative, the Strategic Innovation Fund, and the Accelerated Growth Services are highly welcomed by the industry, and numerous aerospace firms will benefit from these programs. However, these government investments are not optimized unless TCCA's certification and standards departments are adequately funded to provide timely certifications and approvals at the end of the innovation value stream. Let me give you a few numbers to illustrate the scope of the problem. Over the past 10 years, Canada's aerospace industry has grown substantially. Our economic impact has increased by approximately 31% in GDP terms, productivity by 39%, and R&D spending by 64%. Over the same period of time, the budget for Transport Canada's certification and standards branches has not increased at all. In fact, in real terms, it has actually been reduced. This inadequate funding is having a significant negative impact on TCCA's ability to support the industry's export competitiveness and on TCCA's global reputation. It has resulted in delays on certifications and approvals, created bottlenecks, and is impeding the industry's ability to keep up with demand. The international aviation community, including foreign aviation authorities, has expressed concerns to us regarding TCCA's ability to maintain its regulatory leadership. Transport Canada senior management and other Government of Canada departments have recognized the critical role of TCCA in the value stream and have initiated various temporary measures to address the funding shortfall. That has been an encouraging start, but more needs to be done, and urgently. Our recommendation to this committee and to the government is that Budget 2018 establish additional, predictable, and stable funding for TCCA. We recommend that the budget for TCCA be increased by approximately $30 million over 5 years. This is indeed a modest amount, only $6 million a year, that will help to ensure that our $28 billion industry continues to bring products to market quickly and competitively. The budget increase should be used to, 1, hire much-needed, highly specialized certification staff, increase focus on effectively negotiating bilateral airworthiness and maintenance agreements, and the updating and modernization of TCCA's regulatory framework. In conclusion, we urge you to review the current budget at TCCA, in particular with respect to the certification and standards branches. It would be really tragic if the innovations value stream that governments fund to a large degree with industry of our industry is dampened by inadequate funding at TCCA. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mark. Turning then to John McKenna, Air Transport Association of Canada, President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon, bonjour. My name is John McKenna. I'm the President of the Air Transport Association of Canada. ATAC has represented Canada's commercial air transport industry since 1934. We have approximately 190 members engaged in commercial aviation operating in every region of Canada. We welcome the opportunity to comment on 3 budget issues of great concern to our industry, namely the sale of major Canadian airports, CATSA financing and business model, and the new carbon tax coming into effect next year. ATAC strongly opposes the sale of major Canadian airports. We firmly believe that the government's intent to sell off airports in order to raise billions to finance numerous non-aviation infrastructure projects is nearsighted, extremely detrimental to our industry, and will result in significantly increased costs to the airlines and their passengers. Les grands aéroports canadiens versent
Canada's major airports pay over $300 million annually in airport rent to the federal government. Compare that to U.S. airports, who are heavily subsidized by the state and federal governments, and you'll understand why our industry is struggling to remain competitive with our neighbors to the south.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, because investors would expect a reasonable return on the up to $16.6 billion that the City Howe Institute estimates the sale of larger airports would generate. A reasonable return of 5% would be in excess of $800 million annually, more than twice the unreasonable airport rent already being paid to the government. As rent would continue for those airports not sold, the total cost to our industry and its passengers is likely to nearly triple. Furthermore, airports could see their surpluses simply yield higher return on investments rather than reinvestments in services and infrastructure. In addition, if the investors are foreign, there's a good chance that profits would simply be expatriated. To meet their investors' appetite for even normal returns, airports would either have to cut services and investments or increase fees significantly. Recent experiences in such projects, for example in Australia, have resulted in cost per passenger to increase by over 50% in the decade following airport privatization. Comble d'ironie, le gouvernement imposerait.
To add injury to insult, the government would impose a huge new burden on our industry and its passengers while not reinvesting 1 penny of the billions raised back into aviation.
The federal government will not jeopardize the long-term viability of the air transport industry for a one-time cash grab. The funding and governance models of CATSA has always been a serious concern for our industry. For over 10 years, we've been asking the government why it found it acceptable that the air traveler security charge collects over $100 million more per year than is appropriated to CATSA. No answer has been forthcoming. Même si le nombre de passagers augmente sans cesse, les budgets d'ACTA.
Even if the number of passengers is increasing, the revenues are not following suit. The fees are among the highest in the world. And the government is imposing all of the costs of security on passengers in our airports. In other jurisdictions, governments assume the bulk of the cost and only rely on the traveling public for a minor contribution.
Canada type model. The pitfall for applying a user pay model to a security agency is that the governing body would have no decision-making power on the level of service, as that would remain the government's responsibility. Consequently, the administrators could be shouldered with new security measures overnight, be expected to fund them, no questions asked. Nous sommes disposés.
We would support a model which would be a necessary adjustment on the status quo, where the government would work collaboratively with CATSA in policy applications and transform the ATSC into a dedicated fee. This is the fund for passenger safety. It would transform it into a dedicated fee set by CATSA and adjust it to meet its changing needs.
Tabled in the House of Commons last May by the House Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. The carbon tax announced in the last budget is another blow to the competitiveness of our industry. Air carriers already pay $150 million a year in fuel excise tax on jet fuel. Will the fuel excise tax be replaced by the carbon tax, or will this be an additional hit on our industry? The $10 per ton announced for 2018 translates into 2.74 cents per liter. By 2022, this will have raised to 13.69 cents per liter. In the competitive world of international aviation, this is totally unreasonable. I thank the committee for its time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, John. Turning to Mr. Hartford with Beer Canada President. Go ahead, Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And honourable members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to appear here this afternoon. The government took one step forward and two back on domestic brewers this past year. Today, I will ask the Finance Committee to recommend the government point all its policies in a positive, growth-orientated direction aimed at helping brewers be more productive and more competitive. Beer Canada is a national trade association with 50-plus members who combined operate 78 brewing facilities across 10 provinces and 1 territory. The supply and demand for beer, according to a 2013 Conference Board of Canada report, indicates that the demand and supply for beer causes a chain of economic activity that supports more than 163,000 Canadian jobs and generates $5.8 billion in federal, provincial, and municipal tax dollars. Canada has a real advantage in brewing beer. High-quality malting barley is an essential ingredient in beer, and we grow enough of it in Canada to supply the local brewing industry. We have local malting houses, local bottle shops, can manufacturers, packaging manufacturers, and even 5 post-secondary institutions offering programs tailored to beer industry jobs. We also have locally grown hops re-emerging as a domestic supply source. Our country has all the agricultural and manufacturing assets needed to make great beer. Beer has a very large domestic economic footprint, and as a result, every dollar spent on beer in Canada generates more than $1.12 in fact, in value-added economic activity. This is in addition to beer's tax multiplier effect. It is in our country's national economic interest to have policies and laws that help domestic brewers compete and grow. The government took a helpful step forward in May of this year when a delegation of Canadian brewers, large and small, met with the Honourable Lawrence Macaulay to learn that the government was committed to modernizing the federal beer standard under the Food and Drug Regulations. The express purpose of this modernization initiative is to ensure that brewers have the tools necessary to innovate and compete in today's marketplace. The Prime Minister set job creation and innovation in the ag sector as overarching goals for the Minister of Agriculture, and Canadian brewers are thankful that the government has taken action to help our industry. In contrast, Budget 2017 took 2 steps backward. It raised excise rates on beer with no warning and no transition time, and it introduced a mechanism designed to increase federal beer taxes every year with no trigger for review, no endpoint, and no parliamentary oversight. Higher excise rates went into effect the day after the budget was tabled. That added $12 million in cost to domestic brewers. But the bigger surprise was the mechanism that will automatically increase excise duty rates every year by the rate of inflation. This mechanism is set to kick in with the first annual increase on April 1st, 2018. The Finance Committee can help the domestic brewing industry by recommending that this tax escalator mechanism be repealed before it takes effect. As tax policy, increasing excise duty automatically every year is unfair to beer drinkers, too rigid to accommodate regional economic differences, and inappropriate given the challenges the beer industry faces today. On average, the tax on a case of beer already makes up 50% or more of the final retail price, depending on the brand. Per capita beer sales declined 10% between 2006 and 2016. Beer's share of the beverage alcohol market dropped 6.4 percentage points in dollar terms over this 10-year period. And while Canadian brewers remained strong in their home market, their sales in volume terms has dropped by the equivalent of 8.3 million cases of 24 bottles since 2006. If domestic brewers gain those sales back, it would generate $298 million in GDP and $117 million additional tax dollars every year. Automatic annual tax increases is not going to help the domestic brewing industry gain back those sales. Today, I'm asking on behalf of the Canadian brewing industry that the committee recommend the repeal of the annual escalator mechanism now baked into the Excise Act as a result of Budget 2017. Brewers be more productive and competitive in the years ahead. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Luke. Turning to Mr. Gouche, President, Canadian Airports Council.
Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs,
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for this invitation to appear before you today in the context of your pre-budget consultations. My name is Danielle Robert Gooch, and I'm President of the Canadian Airports Council.
the CAC's 2017 budget submission, Canada's airports were pleased that progress is made, particularly on infrastructure funding for small national airport system airports across Canada. The Government of Canada's National Trade and Transportation Corridors Fund allows all major airports to apply for funding. For several years, 6 small NAS airports were barred from applying for these funds. They can now finally access funds to improve safety at their airports. This change is welcome. Over the last 10 years, passenger numbers have grown from 101 million to 141 million at Canadian airports. We are already seeing a 6.3% increase this year. This growth supports our economy in tourism and trade and 141,000 direct jobs in air transport. The efficient movement of goods and people is essential to the productivity and competitiveness of Canadians and businesses across the country. But the growth also means longer wait times at security screening at a number of airports as well as at our air borders. Lors de notre comparution devant vous,
During our appearance before you last year, we proposed to the Government of Canada that it undertake an in-depth review of the security clearance system in Canada, including the implementation of service standards for pre-boarding checks and a mechanism for funding, allowing to better respond to growing demand.
Transport Minister Marc Garneau committed to looking at the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority governance model to make its funding more nimble to growing demand and accountable to service standards. We understand that changes for CATSA will be considered this fall, and this is a good step. Some airports believe the best approach would be to allow airports a greater role in the delivery of screening at airports, as is the case in many other parts of the globe. For such a fundamental part of airport operations, though, it is important we get this right and that government, CATSA, and airports work together on any structural changes that may be made. Finding a long-term solution is essential for passengers who deserve predictability and value for the air traveler security charge they pay. But in the meantime, CATSA needs to be sufficiently funded next year to support demand, and allocating all revenue from the ATSC to CATSA screening is a good place to start. CATSA's current target to process 85% of passengers in under 15 minutes means about 10 million travelers are waiting anywhere from 16 minutes to an hour or longer. We do not believe this target is adequate. Moreover, airports tell us it is not even being consistently met today. And airports are also spending millions of dollars to top up a service that travelers are already paying for. This undermines the goal of reducing the cost of air travel in Canada, as airports have to recover costs from users. Government also should restart its stalled investment in CATSA Plus lanes, which are improving the traveler experience where they have been installed so far. We are also requesting resources for the Canada Border Services Agency to support growing air service demands and continued innovation. International arriving passengers are our fastest growing segment, with 10% growth so far this year, outpacing last year's numbers. Working with CBSA, airports have invested millions of technology and infrastructure to speed up and improve the traveler experience. The agency is at the forefront of keeping Canada safe in an increasingly complex, fast-changing world. CBSA supports international traffic and trade and has worked tremendously hard with airports this summer to manage a heavy flow of travelers. Toronto Pearson continues to see record growth, and this summer was particularly challenging for them as CBSA simply did not have the resources to keep up. With customs halls jammed, passengers routinely held on aircraft or outside customs hall, resulting in passenger delays that we're all working as an industry to avoid. In addition to its security role, of course, CBSA has an important impact on business, trade, and tourism in this country. We're pleased to say that Canada is going in the right direction on this file. Better technologies and processes are constantly being developed, and Canada is at the forefront and should continue to be at the forefront of this. But we also need to reinforce resources for border control officers in the field who do important work. Another area of concern for Minister Garneau is reducing the cost of air travel. Our submission includes 2 recommendations on cost. On the revenue side, the introduction of duty-free stores upon arrival from an international flight would provide an additional service to traveler and additional funds for airports to offset aeronautical charges to airlines. It's a service that's already in place in many other parts of the world. On the cost side, airports last year paid $344 million in rent to the federal government, as my colleague described. As a tax on gross revenue, this rent impacts the way airports evaluate business opportunities with low-margin financial returns. We propose rent be eliminated for all airports with fewer than 3 million passengers and at least capped for larger airports to stop the upward trajectory. In conclusion, I would like to thank you again for your support of the CAC's budget submission last year. Our recommendations this year will enable Canada's airports to improve the competitiveness and productivity of business in the country. They will also improve the traveler experience. I'm pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Danielle. Turning to Mr. Brackle, Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Chief Economist.
Monsieur le Président, merci. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce provided a pre-budget submission with recommendations on productivity. However, the critical issue, really the only issue that our members are worried about for Budget 2018 are the Finance Department's proposed tax changes. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce has been around for many years, and we have never seen a reaction like this from our membership. On an almost daily basis, we get phone calls and emails from members saying, why isn't the Chamber doing more to oppose the tax changes? Why haven't we condemned the proposals more forcefully? And we think it's because the changes are so broad, so far-reaching, and with so many unintended consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, there's not a restaurant or a farm in the country that does not have family members working there, and every single business in Canada has passive income unless they are on the brink of bankruptcy and have no cash whatsoever. It is as though the Finance Department crafted tax measures that would affect the maximum number of businesses in the most complicated manner, only to collect a modest amount of revenue. So here's what we're really worried about. Small business owners generally invest their life savings in the business. They don't often have a separate retirement account. They accumulate the surplus of funds that can be used to get them through economic downturns or for capital investment. As one owner told us, I keep most of the earnings in the company because we're trying to grow, and in construction we go through tough cycles when business dries up. If the government hits investment income with a 73% effective tax rate, business owners won't have any incentive to keep surplus assets in the business. Most will in fact be better off taking their money out of the business. For us, this means less jobs, less investment, and less of a cushion to make it through a downturn, and less productivity. The Bank of Canada has a study from a couple of years ago called Productivity in Canada, Does Firm Size Matter? And they say that half the productivity gap between companies, manufacturing companies in the United States and Canada, is because companies in Canada are smaller, and smaller companies invest less in capital and skills. A tax on passive income would lessen the amount of money they have to invest and cause an even greater gap. Next, imagine a venture capitalist who specializes in green technologies. She takes equity positions in risky startup companies that are trying to commercialize environmental technologies. But some of those investments, in fact, many of those investments could be considered passive income or according to the definition. So she could be hit with a 60 or 70% tax on some of those investments. And finally, imagine trying to explain all of this to a foreign investor. I would refer the committee to page 53 of the finance submission. The apportionment method of taxing passive income, we allocate income into 3 pools, plus a pool for shareholder contributions in order to attribute varying after-tax rates. This is the simplest method, according to the document. The complexity is mind-boggling, and we're concerned that investors would go to the United States before they got to the 4th paragraph.
Could you just slow down a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. The challenge we have is less jobs, less investment, less of a cushion to get us through an economic downturn, less venture capital, and less foreign investment. And when we point this out, when business owners point this out, the accounting firms, the government says, oh no, that's not the intention. This is really targeted at high-income earners, and we hear that. But whatever the intention may be, it has real consequences for small business and the Canadian economy. We would urge you to ask any accountant in the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, as I said, has been around for many years, and we have seen some ideas which are problematic, but we think this one is a doozy. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We don't hear that doozy word around here very often. We hear it lots in PEI. With the Canadian Vintners Association, Ms. Paskowski, President and CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Canadian Vintners Association, better known as the CVA, represents all size wineries operating in Canada, and our members are responsible for more than 90% of the wine produced across this country. Over the past 30 years, industry leadership has elevated grape and wine quality to ensure survival in a highly competitive global marketplace. It has not been an easy road, and since the signing of the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement, our wine sales market share has in fact dropped from 49% to 32%. Despite this loss, we have grown, and today we contribute $9 billion to the Canadian economy, support 37,000 jobs, contribute $1.7 billion in taxes, and attract 4 million tourist visits every year. Canada is the second fastest growing wine market in the world, and with wine consumption growing 3 times faster than the global average, per capita wine consumption in Canada has not only grown by 27% over the past decade, but our sector has invested in 300 new grape wineries over the same period, growing VQA wine sales by 17.5 million litres, the value of which today contributes an additional $1.97 billion to the Canadian economy every year. These same premium wines have an economic impact of $90 per bottle, compared to $15.50 for every imported bottle of wine sold in Canada. The differential provides a real economic opportunity, especially given that the past decade has seen imports capture 70% of Canada's total wine sales growth. Like other wine-producing countries, we know that the Canadian wine industry can make a larger contribution to the national economy, but we must first overcome challenges such as the removal of interprovincial barriers to trade and the competitive forces of some of the largest wine producers in the world, which have and will benefit from CETA, NAFTA, and possibly the TPP. These 3 agreements alone represent 90% of total wine volume imported into Canada, valued at over $2 billion import, not retail value, representing approximately 400 million litres. It's important to clarify that these foreign imports are heavily supported by their governments. For example, the European Union's 2017 National Wine Envelope program funding is $1.83 billion. Further, the Journal of Wine Economics recently published that total EU wine sector support averaged $3.4 billion annually over the period 2007-2012. Budget 2017 set a target of increasing agri-food exports to $75 billion annually by 2025. As such, it is timely for the federal government to support the Canadian wine industry's growth, to take advantage of rapidly expanding sales opportunities both across Canada and beyond our borders. Trade is not one-sided, and like our competition, the Canadian wine industry must be in a position to take full advantage of the opportunities that trade agreements such as CETA, NAFTA, and possibly the TPP offer. Our 2018 pre-budget submission puts forth 3 recommendations. First, it's important to reiterate that the recently legislated annual inflation indexation of the wine excise duty will negatively impact Canada's wine value chain. Recent CVA economic analysis has concluded that over the next 5 years, excise duty indexation will on average raise an additional $8.45 million in annual excise revenues from affected Canadian wines. This will increase consumer price and reduce demand, resulting in an average annual national economic impact loss of $87 million through the value chain. The cumulative negative effect will climb as high as $110 million in 2023. To reverse this negative impact, the CVA recommends that the government review the excise duty structure on wine sold in Canada, including a legislated annual excise duty increase with the goal of growing the Canadian wine industry and stimulating tax revenue. Second, there's a real need to spur investment and innovation to facilitate the growth and expansion of Canadian wine businesses. Mr. Chair, last December, this committee recommended that the federal government support innovation in the Canadian wine sector through improved operational and infrastructure investments. We agree with this recommendation and also support the government's recent introduction of the Strategic Innovation Fund, which is now available to Canada's 6 highest growth sectors, including agri-food, providing the opportunity to deliver the growth potential offered by our Wine Industry Innovation Program recommendation, better known as WIP. Like the Strategic Innovation Fund, WIP has been designed to support growth, productivity, and competitiveness through improved operational and infrastructure investments. Our 5-year WIP proposal would benefit every winery in Canada and is estimated to provide a 38-fold return on the federal government's investment while supporting an additional $7 billion contribution to our sector's national economic impact. Our final recommendation is focused on the application of the small business deduction. The problem facing many wineries is that the qualifying taxable capital test restricts access to the lower tax rate on the first $500,000 of eligible income, penalizing capital-intensive wineries with holdings of high-cost farmland, processing facilities, retail stores, restaurants, etc. Wineries with taxable capital valued below $10 million have access to the full benefit from this tax measure, while those in excess of $15 million are ineligible. While the costs of these typically small and medium-sized family businesses have increased annually, profit margins remain low, and the taxable capital threshold levels have not been adjusted to inflation for 23 years, when the measure was introduced in July 1994. CVA recommends that the federal government exempt the qualifying taxable capital thresholds for agriculture and agri-food sectors, providing full access to this tax benefit. Any loss to the Treasury would be used by industry to stimulate investment and help achieve the ambitious target of increasing agri-food exports to $75 billion annually by 2025. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your presentations and basically sticking to pretty close to the timelines. Before we turn to the first questioner, I do want to welcome Joel Lightbound to the Finance Committee, who has been appointed the new Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. And he certainly comes in when there's no hot issues, so that his timing is excellent.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome,
Chair.
Joel.
Glad to be here.
Turning to questions, then 7 minutes, Mr. Greywall.
Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming today. We really appreciate it. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, I have no doubt that you will get a lot of questions today, so I'm going to focus my questions to the aerospace industry. So my apologies, I'm not ignoring you. I just think that you'll be kept busy throughout the questions today. Anyways, Pearson International Airport is right beside my riding. A lot of people work at Pearson International Airport in my riding. I really appreciated Mr. McKenna's comment that the government shouldn't be privatizing the airports because cost per passenger will increase. My own personal research on the issue has said that where airports in the world have been privatized, indeed the cost per passenger has increased. I wanted to get your feedback, Daniel, as the president of the Canadian Airports Council. You didn't bring this up, and I thought that was kind of unique.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. Our airports have a variety of views on the file, so at the moment we're not taking a position. Now, there hasn't actually been anything concrete put forward, so there isn't actually anything to react to, but that's why I didn't really address it. Our airports have a variety of views, and they're expressing those individually, which is, absolutely appropriate.
Yeah, and so that's a really interesting position to take as an individual that represents all the airports. So I'll go to Mr. McKenna. You mentioned in your submission that in Australia, where an airport was privatized, the cost per passenger increased by 50% over a decade. Do you have other examples in the world where airports have been privatized and the cost per passenger has increased?
Well, there was not a question of one airport. It's privatization of many airports in Australia, and that was the average. It went up about 50%. We're actually studying that right now across the world. That one's a prime example because that was done not too many years ago. But we are addressing that. I will be happy to supply you that information later on.
You know, I would really appreciate if you could send the committee that report. More importantly, also in your study, not to recommend if you should take this or not take this, the corresponding labor issues around the airport. So Pearson indirectly and directly employs like 40,000 or 400,000. I can't, the number slips my mind. I think it's 40,000 people in and around that area. It'd be really interesting to know the impact of privatization on employees of the airport that are directly or indirectly impacted by the economic corridor that's represented by specifically major airports like Pearson. You both, gentlemen, mentioned CATSA. CATSA funding is something that is extremely important. Now, especially for people that travel all the time, we see this every Monday morning when we go to Pearson Airport, and most of the people on this committee are probably Nexus holders, so you're probably still in another line, but just the frustration on how slow it is to get through security in Canada. You know, the recommendation is always on money. Money is a big part of it, don't get me wrong. The more people that you have, the faster they'll get through. Is there any other recommendations that you've seen in terms of procedural changes that could make it more efficient?
Well, we have. That's CATSA Plus employs technology, but it's also procedural changes. There is some capital investment required, and CATSA has a plan to roll that out at the highest volume airports. But unfortunately, Budget 2017 has stalled that. So it's only partially implemented in Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver, I believe, at the moment. So, for example, you're not seeing it probably at Toronto Pearson unless you're going through, I know they have it at the transborder connecting to the U.S., but it's dramatically improving the traveler experience, and that's why it's one of the recommendations that we have that investment be restarted. In a volume-based business, though, you know, 6.3% this year alone, 10% increase in international travelers. You know, efficiency and technology are going to do a lot, but you still need you know, the bodies on the ground as well. It's a volume-based business. There's no way around it. We're innovating to do more with less, but the resources do need to keep up.
Yes, also if I may add, the service levels, the level of sensitivity is not determined by CATSA. They get their marching orders from the government, from Transport Canada, and they have to apply them. We go to other countries where, of course, this, you know, how long they look at each piece of luggage is a lot shorter because they don't have the same standards. So that also affects. It's not just a question of efficiency of operations. It's a level of service issue also. How much are we detecting? How much are we looking at each piece of luggage?
And not that I'm telling you guys how to do your jobs, but something that I've seen as a passenger is the frustration that passengers aren't well informed of what can go through security and what cannot go through security. And that makes things a lot slower. Like in the Nexus line, for example, you know, having to tell a passenger to take their laptop out of their carry-on, I mean, that should be before you even get your Nexus pass. I mean, you should be able to do a test on something like that, because why would you be given a Nexus pass if you don't know the basics of trying to get through security in the first place? And so I've seen in international airports, I've seen that there's all over the airport, there's virtual 3D individuals speaking about, you know, this is what you got to do before you go through security. Before they even get into the line of security, whereas we don't have that. And even while we're waiting in the lines in security, nobody's challenging passengers, you know, take away your liquids, make sure you don't have anything over 100 milliliters, make sure your laptop's in a different bin, make sure you take off your shoes, et cetera, et cetera. That would actually make it more efficient one time you got to the line, as opposed to going to the line and having the person walk through the metal detector 3 times.
Correct, and you know, we did spend a lot of time working with CATSA on some of that stuff in terms of education, you know, process, trying to improve processes, you know, that sort of thing. It's one of the reasons why CATSA Plus helps, because in terms of the process, you actually have 4 parallel stations. So four individuals are going up and putting their bins in. So if you have one passenger who's slow, he or she is not slowing down the others. That's one of the reasons why it works so much better. Absolutely. I mean, travelers are at different sophistication levels, and that's a reality of life.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Alves, 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate everyone being here today. I'm going to start with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Simply put, you've said your number one concern is the tax changes proposed by the governments in relation to Canadian-controlled private corporations. You've mainly talked about the challenge, and what I've seen from speaking to many of your members is many of them do not know what to do and have stopped all investment. They've stopped hiring because they're concerned because they don't know the rules. I also know many of them are angry. They're angered by the fact that they're told that they're somehow tax cheats, that they're exploiting loopholes, rather than utilizing the systems that's been set up so that it encourages people to keep investment and savings within their corporation. Now, we've had a system of integration where a taxpayer can defer certain taxes if they hold it within the corporation, but eventually they will pay the same rate, if not more. Have you been hearing from your members the same kind of things?
Yes, I think our members have expressed themselves very forcefully on that. They object to the language of loopholes. Passive income is not a loophole. It's the way corporate taxes worked since 1973. It's income splitting is paying family members, and so a lot of family members, we hear emails that are very passionate about saying, you know, my business wouldn't have succeeded if I didn't have my son working 12 hours a day, and these reasonableness tests. What is involved in reasonableness tests? How do you assess the value of a workforce? So we've heard very aggressive emails and calls.
And you have where CRA may be overwhelmed with something that eventually will be thrown onto tax court. And I think that this is the complexity of them. I have many chartered accountants that are quite confused how the government will do it, but I guess that's what they'll do what they'll do. But I just also want to talk about not just loopholes, because I totally agree. It's a feature of the system, not a loophole. When we talk about passive versus active investment, if I choose as a corporation owner to put money into a bond, or if there's a new IPO or issuance of stock for a company, if I don't have plans for that money, I will put it in the hands of someone that will, so that they can produce and create in the economy. Is that correct?
You're exactly right, and a lot of business owners invest in side businesses and businesses that their employees may start, and so it seems like a dividend income or a portfolio income, but it really is the type of venture capital and the type of productive investment that we absolutely want to see and encourage in Canada. That's how small businesses get their start. Is from.
Yeah. Well, and again, many people will hold assets passively, but just in case there's catastrophic failure. In equipment, in plans or whatnot, and if they're lucky enough to sell their company, many times they just end up selling the assets. That what is remaining is often what their retirement is. And of course, you mentioned income splitting. We allow income splitting for seniors with pension income, and I just want to point out that is not available to entrepreneurs when they do retire, and that's something that these changes will make less fair. Many entrepreneurs do not have a pension. Now, people might say they could invest in CPP, but then they'd be paying twice. And then again, they wouldn't be able to put that money into a vehicle where they could quickly draw upon if there was a catastrophic failure of a mill or of a certain piece of equipment. So certainly appreciate your contribution. I'd like to go to the Canadian Vintners Association. Obviously, estate planning is very important for estate wineries. And so you've said that you're quite concerned about how these rules would impact small family wineries. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So along with some of the changes this government has already put in place by adding excise to wine, so you have the big wineries that do pay excise. They're complaining that consumers are going to actually consume less because of a higher price. You have where smaller wineries that do not have the same scalability. that have those extra costs for them to be able to market their product are also going to be disincentivized because of property values and because of these changes. This does not paint a very good picture for your industry if these changes go ahead.
No, that's absolutely correct. I mean, as I mentioned, the excise impact alone is $87 million to the economy, and our analysis would show that it's going to raise an extra $500,000 per year to the federal government. But you put excise on top of carbon tax, on top of the challenges that we'll have with, not that we're opposed to free trade, but the challenge that we will have competing with monsters like United States and European countries, and then the small business tax proposals on our small and medium-sized enterprises is definitely going to have an impact. It creates a lot of uncertainty in the industry and the ability to invest at a time when we have to be investing to be able to compete with the rest of the world.
Okay, how much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
And a half.
Great, so I'll go to Beer Canada. Mr. Harford, you've also mentioned that with higher prices there will be less consumption. We've already seen some of the trends in your industry, at least in Canada. Canadian consumption seems to be down. So again, raising prices means less consumption. That means you're worried. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think the affordability of beer is becoming an issue for the industry. It has been an emerging issue for some time, and certainly the automatic nature of the escalator that was brought in under Budget 2017 is just going to make the problem worse. Because it's going to increase the excise rate, which is a production tax, and then on top of that you've got provincial markups and you've got HST on top of that, so by the time it hits the consumer, we're talking about a much bigger increase that is not going to help sales.
Okay.
Got it there. I'm sure this won't be the first time I remind panels and committee members, but the business tax, small business tax proposal is going through consultations, and consultations end on October 2nd. So I would remind people certainly to get their input into the Department of Finance as well. I think it's been a good discussion, although I'm not criticizing the discussion in any way. Yeah. And it could impact competitiveness and productivity, which we're looking at. Mr. Dussault.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci à nos témoins de...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for appearing before us today during this meeting. My question pertains to airports, and I would like to delve into the matter of airplane tickets, airfares. I read in one of the briefs that was tabled, I forget whose, perhaps it was from the Airports Council, but it says that our airport infrastructure is deemed to be the best in the world. But with regard to costs, airline travel in Canada is among the highest in the world as well. So a question perhaps for Mr. McKenna, Mr. Gooch, if they could provide us with their best ideas solutions-wise for these problems. Security screening, regulations, are these the issues? Is it something else that, in your view, should be a priority if we want to reduce the cost of airfares and airport rents that you mentioned? So what would you say is the main problem having an impact on the cost, and explain to us why it's so expensive to travel? Well, the problem is that our industry is an industry that largely belonged to the government in the past, and it was then privatized. But the government did nevertheless retain the funds. The industry was privatized, but it still wants to receive monies. So our industry subsidizes the government for about $1 billion. There is then the fees for security, the excise tax I mentioned, and also the tax on the airport rents. And those three things added together are superior to the $1 billion. So because of those factors, we're already less competitive. It's the passengers that pay for the infrastructure that isn't subsidized by the government. $1.5 billion in the 1990s was the value of the airports transferred. by the government, and hundreds of millions of dollars have been invested in airports since then. So the passenger funds everything, and that's why it's very costly to travel in Canada. Thank you for the question. The issue is quite complex. Clearly, the cost of airline tickets is an issue, especially for those airports situated close to the border.
On the revenue side, allowing airports to be a little bit more creative and inventive in terms of how they develop their businesses. The formula for rent is charged on gross revenue, which means if there's a business line, with fairly thin margins, they may have to pay as much as 12% in rent on any revenue they earn on top, which another organization, across the street that's not an airport authority would not have to pay. So they have to weigh that. So certainly looking at the airport rent formula there would be very helpful. We've said eliminate it for airports, in the very least eliminate it for airport rent for airports with fewer than 3 million passengers. Now that would be all but the large 8, and it would, I think, only affect about $20 million, but it would greatly benefit those airports. For the larger airports where we're seeing such strong growth, honestly, the bigger concern is around investment in services. So the money is coming out of the industry. We're saying let's make sure that gets back into supporting the services that the travelers need. The cost of travel is a big priority for the government, but so is the traveler experience. Things are going very well we're having the right conversations on CATSA, for example. That's good, but it needs to come to fruition. CATSA needs to be adequately funded next year. CBSA, working very well with airports to mitigate the problems that we saw, in particular in Montreal last year. But Toronto is still having some serious problems. I understand, I have a report here, the two-week period in August, 73, over a 2-week period, 73 aircraft were sort of held at the gate with travelers kept on board because the customs hall was too full. That's the kind of tarmac delay that we're, in other areas trying to mitigate. So certainly for the largest airports, it's less about, reducing the cost, but more about making sure that the services are adequately funded so that we can manage that growth.
Merci pour les pistes de solutions. Puis,
Thank you for those solutions. When we talk about competitiveness, productivity, I support you in the work you would like to see done. With regard to vintners, I would have a question. First of all, I was surprised to see the numbers. Only 33% of the Canadian wine market is occupied by Canadian product. Compared with other countries, that's a very low percentage, and there's a lot of potential for growth if we look at the increasing consumption of wine compared with that of beer. It's encouraging for you. The Minister for Trade said it was a wonderful day for Canada, the trade agreement with Europe. With regard to wine, it seems that there is an impact. Would you qualify the day that we negotiated this agreement with Europe as being the best day for Canada?
But we have been supportive of the CETA agreement since it started being negotiated in 2009. I mean, the fundamental reason for that being that it opens up access to millions of consumers for our products. And it eliminates import tariffs immediately, significantly higher import tariffs than are available on European wines entering into Canada. The challenge that we have is that we only own, as you mentioned, 32% of our domestic market. Of that, 10% is our premium wines. Those 10% is what we're looking at for the export market, not the value wines that we sell within the domestic market only. But when we aren't able to sell our wines across interprovincial borders, that does not allow us to grow our domestic marketplace. When we only own 32% of our market, we have to grow our domestic market, as every other wine-producing country, to then enter into the export market. We can't turn our back on a domestic market and only export. To do that, we are looking at measures such as changes to the excise duties to ensure that we're competitive. elimination of interprovincial borders, introducing a wine industry innovation program to help us invest in measures that will allow us to become more competitive, grow market share in Canada, as well as take advantage of those opportunities that these trade agreements have put into place. And what we've always said is that we support trade agreements, but like other countries, our government has to help us take advantage of what those trade agreements have to offer. If not, Europe owns 50% of this market. They will enter into this market duty-free starting tomorrow and continue to capture more and more market share. So we're looking for support, as is provided into every other wine-producing country, to be able to grow our domestic marketplace and contribute more to the economy. As I mentioned, what we're proposing in terms of the WIP program will cost very little for the federal government and contribute $7 billion over 5 years to the national economy.
Thank you. Thank you both. Before I turn to Mr. Sabara, just to you, in your brief, you and I don't know the page number here, but you basically leave the impression that, and we had this big discussion on inflationary excise taxes last pre-budget consultations, but in this submission you're saying that the excise duty indexation will on average raise an additional $8.45 million in annual excise revenues. It'll increase consumer price, etc., but it'll mean an average annual loss to the economy of $87 million. Are you suggesting that if we that the amount of money that the federal government is getting out of increased excise taxes, if it was lowered, the government would have more revenue? Is that what you're suggesting? I just don't follow your line of thought in the submission.
All right, thank you for the question. You know, when the excise escalator was put into place in the budget, the question was asked to finance officials whether or not they'd done any analysis on this introduction. The response was no, they had not. So we did engage an economist based upon the economic model that we released in March of this year to see what the impact was based upon price elasticities of consumers purchasing wine. And if the excise increased by 2% every year, and the industry passed that on to the consumer, given that these wines that are affected are value brands, and so the consumer is very price conscious, they would move away. They would demand something else, and the industry would lose out. So as we model that through our economic model, seeing what the impact would be on the total economy, the results that came out was that the increased excise on these Canadian-produced wines would result in additional revenue of roughly $8.5 million per year over the 5-year period that we studied. That federal taxes would go down by about $7.9 million based upon a decrease in demand. Provincial taxes would go down by about $7 million, and the end result would be a gain to the federal government in terms of taxation of roughly $500,000 per year on average over that 5-year period. However, the decrease in demand, the impact on the total economy, as we are a $9 billion industry, as you work through, you know, to the liquor boards, to the restaurants, to the truck drivers, everything else, the direct, indirect, and induced impact of the excise escalator over that 5-year period would be a loss to the economy of $87 million.
Okay, that clarifies it for me. Thank you very much. And can you, is it possible for you to forward that study to the clerk, that economic analysis?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Sabara, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Merci. Bienvenue à tous aujourd'hui.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone today. Thank you very much for your presentations.
In terms of my comments this afternoon, excuse me, you know, the OECD just raised our growth forecast for this year, I think at 3.2%, so we'll be leading the G7. We had a second quarter, which I'm going to use a term which rocked, if I can go back to my teenage years, a 4.5% annualized growth rate. Canadian economy has generated nearly 400,000 new jobs, majority of which are full-time, and our unemployment rate has fallen to an historical low, and our participation rate has actually ticked up. So there's some really good signs going on within our economy, and it's great to report that. but we can never rest on our laurels, and we always must work harder, and we must work harder with our stakeholders. I would like to say to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, your members' message is loud, it's clear, and we are listening. There is a consultation period. Many constituents and stakeholders in my riding, in the area I live in, York Region, are entrepreneurs. I was once an entrepreneur in the sense that I was awarded an Entrepreneur Award by the Honourable Grace McCarthy, the Social Credit Cabinet Minister in the late 1980s or 90s. I guess I can go back about 20-some odd years. So I hear you. And at the same time, tax fairness is something that we need to look at. And issues of income sprinkling, not splitting, but income sprinkling, conversion of dividends to capital gains are things that I think need to be looked at. But we also need to ensure that there are no unintended consequences on things like capital formation and so forth, and that small businesses continue to thrive, much like they're thriving today. And that's, I'll leave it at that. Amazon to the airport, guys, and I'm going to leave it at that. Amazon has stated that they will put a second headquarters somewhere in North America, but they will need a proper and sufficient size airport and somewhere they can move goods, services, and people. And I can think of no better place than the Toronto area where myself and my colleague, Mr. Gree, will sit. What can we do to improve our airport services to ensure that we can attract investment such as the potential Amazon second site? Thank you. And I mention the other two participants afterwards.
Well, thank you for your question, Mr. Sarbara. When large organizations are considering communities to locate themselves in, access to efficient air service, airports with a lot of air service is one of the criteria that they'll often look at. I think the areas that we've recommended today in terms of CBSA, in terms of CATSA, if executives can't get through the airport in a reasonable and have a reasonable experience along the way, they're not happy about that. And certainly CBSA is not just supporting travelers and travelers going through airports, but it also handles goods coming through Canada as well. Like I said, the agency is doing a very good job dealing with the strong demand, which is in part related to the strong demand we're having in our economy, the strong growth in our economy. So we just need to make sure that they continue to be armed with the tools to manage that growth and to look ahead and innovate and be at the forefront of what countries around the world are doing with similar rates of growth.
Thank you. Can I turn it over to Mr. McKenna quickly, please?
Well, I support what Mr. Gooch has said. Obviously, the proximity of an airport is key to today with the just-on-time management that people have. And the cost of doing business there is crucial also. So that's an element that people will look at. We'll go somewhere else because flying out of there or doing business there is just too expensive. So they will look at it for services, but cost of services also.
Okay. To Dan from, and I want to mispronounce your last name, Dan, from the Vintners Association. As you well know, I have a major winery that's headquarters in my riding, and they're great employers. They employ a lot of people, both in my riding and down in Niagara. The WIP program that you guys have spoken about, your organization has spoken about, I believe does have some merit and does have some multiplier effects. And if you can reiterate, how quickly could the vintners or could wineries, and whatever level of integration you want to speak about within the process, how quickly could they benefit from this program? What would be the economic impact or lag or forward dating on that? How quickly could they respond?
I would say that we would be able to respond immediately. This is the type of program that would benefit every single winery in this country to whatever level they wanted to invest in. We have put a cap on the amount of investment based upon the sized winery, but 77% of all the benefits would go to small and medium-sized wineries, and they could turn it over extremely quickly, especially in light of CETA coming into play. I mean, the competition's fierce today; it's going to get fiercer. And the opportunities are there to become more innovative, to produce a better quality product, to take advantage of those opportunities in Canada and abroad. So I would say that it would be implemented immediately if the government would provide that 30% share of every dollar of investment.
Mr. Kelly, 5 minutes.
My first question, I would just quickly like to ask Mr. McKenna about the effect of the carbon tax on the price of flights and what will be passed on to consumers. You mentioned estimates of what you thought it would do to the cost of the price of a liter of jet fuel. Can you put that in perspective for ticket price increases that you suspect would result?
Well, by 2022, for typical round trip between two cities in Canada, well, let's say a round trip ticket, not typical, but from here to Winnipeg, we're talking about a $3,000 increase in the cost of fuel for a typical 737, based on the consumption. So clearly that will trickle down to the passengers.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move now to Mr. Breckel. And I heard loud and clear that your only ask is to reconsider, or at least to hear the concerns around the small business tax increases that are coming. So your members, either in total or just by anecdote, how many of them said that they would either shut down or move their operations if this goes through?
We haven't surveyed members on the responses to it. The challenge is that the consultation period is so short, and so business owners are just finding out. They're going to see their accountants, and so they're finding out what this actually means for their business now. So that's why I'm still getting emails. It's been in the media for weeks, but business owners don't have time to understand what it means for their business. They're just finding out now.
I asked the question because at the town hall or the roundtables that I've attended, that was a common theme that was brought up. They said, I will either shut down my business, I will fail to expand my business, I will abandon plans to expand, or I will seek another jurisdiction, particularly with medical professionals. So you mentioned the consultation period. What do you have to say about the adequacy of a 75-day consultation period on the largest change in income tax in 40-plus years?
Well, I think that's what troubles our members most. I think maybe some would agree that there might be some abuses that could be addressed, but there are ways to get at them and to make sure that we're not impacting a whole wide swath of businesses. It's really 70 days is not enough to understand really what are the impacts, and so that's why we've urged the government to shelve these proposals and have a broader discussion. We'd love to come up with ideas about how to address some of the inadequacies of tax fairness in Canada, but this is not the way to do it, just jamming it through.
Indeed. Have any of your members that you've spoken to challenged the notion, as stated by the minister, that those who are in less than $150,000 a year won't be affected?
No, I think what the minister might be getting at is that once you get to 150,000, your RRSPs max out. But the thing is, lots of businesses that earn 60, 50,000 are paying themselves 50,000, but they're keeping the money in the business. So it actually impacts business owners at all income levels. We think it's absolutely not limited to the 150,000.
So your members have pointed that out, that
Very
these
clearly,
changes
absolutely.
will affect business owners at all income levels. Especially perhaps those that have been in business for quite some time and had planned their family's overall financial plan for retirement and the eventual sort of career cycle of themselves as workers and of their business, that the investment of passive income is
Or Mr. Gilly, let me give you an example of a couple that have owned a bakery and that they've been working there for 30 years, and they pay themselves dividends of $50,000 a year each one. Now, one of them starts slowing down the work that she does because they're aging and they just reduce the number of hours. Well, suddenly that could trigger a higher tax rate because the labor contribution has declined. Now, if the family had invested in a RIF, registered retirement income fund, that wouldn't have happened. So we understand that's not the intention of these proposals, but there's real impacts for businesses.
Well, I can't imagine that your members would really care one way or another what the intention is. The effect of what is going to happen is really what would matter most. Anything else with the few moments we have before my time is up?
No, we would encourage a broader consultation, and actually our CEO, Perrin Beatty, was on Atlantic Canada talking with the Coalition for Tax Fairness, the unions, and the other Centre for Policy Alternatives. And the gentleman said, we would welcome a broader discussion on tax fairness in Canada, how to make the system really fair. And so our parents said, well, would you join me in calling for a broader consultation? Like I said, well, I guess so. It sort of makes sense. So even the Coalition for Tax Fairness, the unions, agrees with us that we should have a broader consultation on this. So we're pleased to report it's unanimous. And
Thank you both. Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Why don't I pick up right where we left off then? In terms of Mr. Brackle, you've been here before. You've been to the pre-budget consultation process. You know how this works in the sense of we receive the briefs, we hear testimony, we ask questions. Based on that testimony, we can actually make recommendations to the Minister of Finance for the next budget. So you mentioned that your members would actually be interested in going after some of the abuses. What specifically should we be going after that your members support?
Well, you could take an example of dividends. You can have a dividend which is for so a stock issued for $1, it's redeemable, and it's a discretionary dividend. So you can redeem that $1 dividend, and you can discretionarily send out limitless amounts to a family member, something like that. So that's a little bit extreme, and CRA has challenged that in the courts and said this is a bit preposterous. So there are extremes, but the thing is, we agree that maybe some of those extremes should be addressed, but it's just the way it's written.
Yeah, but that's why we're here, right? This is the point of the testimony. So if we get recommendations, then we can put them forward, because you also said, you didn't appreciate the jamming it through. But there isn't actually legislation, it's a consultation. But where you're sitting here today, instead of your testimony being on growth, which was the request of the committee, and I get it. I get that the concern would be that growth could be impeded if your members feel that these are unfair. But the process we're doing here today is recommendations. So nothing's being jammed through. You actually have the opportunity to put testimony on the table. So in terms of income sprinkling, you mentioned, you used the example, son working in the business, and legitimately so, and how could anyone possibly deal with CRA and legitimize that work? But people who aren't incorporated, and whether they hire their son or a kid they've known forever, justify the expense of the employee through paying them an income. So the Minister of Finance has actually said a family member legitimately working in the business can continue to do so. So couldn't they simply justify that as a legitimate employee by paying them just like any other business owner would?
Well, I think the challenge is when you look at what's the definition of reasonable. So a spouse or a family member in a business doesn't just do one thing. They sometimes do a little bit of everything. They do a little bit of marketing, they meet with customers, they clean up, they answer the phone, they help write the reports. And so it's difficult to say what's the appropriate salary level for that. So if you're paying a family member of $60,000 and CRA assesses the value of their labor at $30,000, how do you go back and prove it? And so we've heard different things from business owners and accountants that say they have been successfully able to prove it under reasonableness tests, but other times it's really hard because, and poor CRA, how were they supposed to enforce this? So it's a tough one.
And when legislation comes forward, then the recommendation would be to see what that actual definition is and then tell us if you think that's good or not. I'm wondering if your membership, if amongst individuals who are incorporated, if someone, let's say a single mother who has 2 children that are 13 and 14 versus a single woman who has 2 kids that are 19 and 20, both incorporated, one can sprinkle income to the 19 and 20-year-old, but the other individual who's incorporated cannot. Do your members feel that that's fair even amongst entrepreneurs and small business owners?
Well, I think the overwhelming majority of restaurants and farms in this country have family businesses where the family member, the spouse and the kids are really genuinely contributing to it. I think what we're concerned about is that there's going to unleash, that CRA is going to unleash an army of auditors on this. So finance says they're going to raise $250 million by tightening up the rules on income sprinkling. They're going to have to tax $1 billion of salaries. They're going to have to audit hundreds of thousands of businesses.
I appreciate it. I have limited time, but my question was amongst those two scenarios. My first job was when I was 16. If I worked for an incorporated individual, or if my parents were an incorporated individual and I worked there, they didn't. I don't have this scenario, but hypothetically, the 16-year-old can't have income sprinkled to them, but an individual can sprinkle income to a 19-year-old. So amongst your members, do they feel that's fair, even amongst the entrepreneurs?
You're out of that limited time, so Mr. Brackle.
Yeah, no, I think you have a point. There's a fairness issue there, for sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Albas, and then Mr. Picard, and that'll close off the session.
I'm just going to maybe take off from where MP O'Connell had left. That's why we have the tax on split income rules as they are, TOSI. And if you actually look at the consultation paper your minister has put out, it actually says we're just not winning enough of these cases. And so, again, what's reasonable to the CRA and what's reasonable in someone's case is going to have to end up being defined by court, which is a very long and expensive time. And if you remember, the Auditor General recently did a report, I think it was this spring, saying that there's a huge amount of time wasted right now as people go slowly through our tax system. So, and I have to say, Mr. Brackle, I've never heard the word poor and CRA in the same sentence. So I'm sure there's some officials somewhere that are finally saying, someone who understands us. So I'm going to go to Mr. McKenna. Mr. McKenna, I'm from British Columbia. Now, in British Columbia, we do have a carbon tax, but there is no tax on jet fuel. And it was specific because they didn't want to see business being moved to other jurisdictions that did not have such a tax, like the United States or Alberta. People would just say, let's just not buy fuel in BC, we'll stop in the United States and fuel up because it's cheaper. Now, with this federal carbon tax, even though the British Columbia carbon tax is exempted, you will still your industry would still have to pay. Is that correct? Or is the federal proposal not to incorporate jet fuel?
No, jet fuel is included. The federal tax would apply if the provinces don't have a tax themselves. If they have a carbon tax program, then there won't be, the federal tax is a backstop.
So we're in fact going to be pushing business down south then, is that correct?
Well, yes, we're doing that already in aviation considerably, so this would add to it.
Just another thing, so it's not just the rents and whatnot that are making consumers go down to the United States, it's us. We're doing this by these choices, is that correct?
Yes, yes indeed, because if you look at the price of a ticket today, the flight part hasn't changed in 20 years. All the other charges have, including that.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. So in British Columbia, we're going to have two carbon taxes then. There's going to be the provincial carbon tax, and then there'll be the federal carbon tax to capture jet fuel. Is that correct?
Well, I think they're going to take a case by or province by province case. We asked that very question. We did not get an answer to that.
Okay, so they have no answers. Okay, well, maybe they haven't thought of it yet. Now, in relation to privatization, some of these airports were actually, at one point, municipal assets that were paid for, so and out of civic taxpayers' funds, and then through an arrangement with the federal government, they were eventually given over and basically held in trust. Now, Kelowna is a case like that. Do you think that that there is a possibility that an airport like Kelowna could be sold despite it being really paid for by municipal taxpayers? That doesn't sound right.
I can't give you the example of Kelowna. Maybe Daniel can help me there. But
well, Kelowna is actually the only one that I'm aware of that's a national airport system that did come from municipal. It is a special case. I mean, we know consultations and work has been done on the file. Our understanding is most of it has concentrated on the 8 largest airports, of which Kelowna is not one, but...
Theoretically, that could be a possibility, though, if they're looking to say, let's get this asset class off our books and realize it so they can pay down some of their deficits. Maybe that could be in there. I don't know.
I really don't know, beyond. I really don't know to the extent that they've been looking at, airports
I'll
other
do
than
some
what
more homework
we know
then.
that.
I appreciate that. Okay, sir, I just want to talk, Mr. Beauregard, in regards to what you're saying is that we invest, and I mean we collectively, government, parliament, whoever approves and directs, a lot of money into your industry. And it all seems to focus mainly on the front end, which is innovation, new creation, and whatnot. But you're saying the final little bit where we have certification of those planes and different assets, is not being done on a timely basis. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. The reality is that any aeronautical product, part, service, maintenance services, it must be approved by Transport Canada, or else you simply can't use it on a civil aircraft in Canada, and most importantly, you can't export that product or service. 80% of our industry is exported, so if you don't have timely certification or approvals by Transport Canada, Civil Aviation, you can't do anything with those millions of dollars that are invested. It just is not, you can't do anything with it. You have to have it approved. And more importantly, the point is that Transport Canada's approvals and certifications must be recognized globally, must be recognized by our trading partners, the United States, Europe. And so the agency, the Transport Canada Civil Aviation staff levels must be appropriate. They're appropriate to get other agencies like the FAA and European agencies to recognize the Transport Canada certifications and approvals.
Thank you.
Just on that topic, I had a question as well. I was going to bring it up at the end, but we have to look at committee on what is possible and doable. What's the impact on competitiveness and productivity of not being able to get timely certification? I mean, that's what our hearing says, productivity and competitiveness. What do you see as specifically the impact there, and how does it face it?
I can speak perhaps anecdotally about some of the issues. If you do not get your Transport Canada certification in a timely manner, you obviously then cannot export the product in a timely manner. So you have a time value of money effect immediately there. With regard to some of the international agreements, I call them airworthiness or maintenance bilaterals, if we do not improve those and seek out other partners, international partners, our services and products are either simply not imported into those other countries, or they take a long time to get approved. I cite an example. Transport Canada has been trying to negotiate since 2012 a maintenance bilateral with Japan. It is still not done yet, despite the Prime Minister, prior Prime Minister, and prior Ministers of Transport trying to do this. It still isn't done. This has an immediate impact on a number of our members being able to send repaired products to Japan.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Picard. Last questioner of this panel.
Merci. For information, I'll go all in front.
Thank you.
Use your headphones, otherwise, bear with me. Monsieur Gooch, je suis ravi que vous ayez mentionné.
Mr. Gooch, I'm delighted that you mentioned the great cooperation between airports and customs to eliminate the long wait times, but I would like to give you the opportunity to explain further the problem and the possible solutions, because it's been recognized that this is a tripartite problem involving also airline companies, and it's a problem that in fact is limited especially during holiday times, there's a maximum number of airplanes waiting. So there's a bottleneck in airports, and it's no surprise that indeed there's a surplus of visitors entering the airport, and you're limited by the number of surplus airplanes and the insufficient number of customs kiosks. So would your solution also involve airline companies that would participate in the search for a solution to reduce perhaps the number of planes landing at the same time? Thank you for the question. I will answer in English.
In the last few years, I'm working with airports, where airports have actually made a lot of the technological investments in things like kiosks that allow more travelers to be processed without having to see officers. The airline industry, we can't tell airlines when to land. It just doesn't work that way. The scheduling of aircraft flights is very complex. We have Canada's an important part of an international network, with a hub and spoke system. Our business is to encourage growth. It's good to grow air services. New destinations are connecting Canadian travelers and businesses, and we want to encourage more of that. At the moment, things are going a lot better than they were, in part because of the innovation that we've seen, particularly in Montreal and Vancouver. I understand things are going very well. Toronto is still having a challenge, but it's getting those travelers through screening, and technology and innovation is a big part of it, and we need to continue investing there. But when you have the tremendous growth that we've had and are continuing to have and will continue to have, you can't forget the bodies on the ground. The border control officers do a very important job, and we need to ensure that resources for that side of the businesses are reinforced as well.
La technologie que vous utilisez dans l'aéroport.
The technology you use in airports, well, it's an investment that is very important, but it's a heavy one. And very many people are unaware of these pre-clearance kiosks before moving on to see the customs agent. So people wind up before the customs officer, even if the kiosks are there, if they're not aware of their existence. So I have a two-part question. How do airports ensure or advertise this new technology? Because I think that it could reduce the number of people that present themselves before an officer, a customs officer. Second problem, it's a problem many of us have experienced. I have a Nexus card. We go through customs. It's fabulous. It goes quickly. I claim my luggage. It's the last stage that stumps everyone. You wait around. It takes some time to get your luggage delivered. It's a physical exercise, but it's part of the complete experience of a passenger's arrival in an airport. And often there are criticisms made with regard to the wait times for luggage.
Are new, and so some of the familiarity with how to use the systems will come with time. There is an educational component to this. I'd say it's an ongoing effort with CBSA. You're seeing kiosks be put further downstream or upstream in terms of closer to the gate and further away from the customs hall. That's helping. We have a tremendously valuable forum with Transport Canada called the Air Consultative Committee, where CBSA, Citizenship and Immigration, Transport Canada work together, because all of these agencies have a role in the process. It's amazingly complex how the responsibilities for this traffic flow really kind of align. So a lot of that work is happening, and the educational work is happening, and the way that the technology works itself is improving. I mean, the primary inspection kiosks that are in place, there's some issues with the transaction times, and so we're working with CBSA on how to make that move a little bit better. So that's a work in progress. Can you remind me of the second part of your question?
Getting my luggage in time at the belt.
Well, you know what? Airports have been investing significant amounts of money into new baggage systems, in part because the screening of baggage needs are increasing. That certainly improves the delivery times. But the wait to leave the customs hall, it's not really related to that. Travelers often will have their baggage and then they're sort of waiting to leave through the customs hall. And that gets back to that work with our partners on processes. If you go to other parts of the world, there's a red door, green door system, for example, where if you go through the green door, that means I have nothing to declare. You're making, just by that action, you're making a declaration that you have nothing to declare. We don't yet have that in Canada. I think it's part of the roadmap for the future, but these are the kinds of files that we are all working together on.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and thank all the panelists for their presentations and the questions and answers. That concludes panel 1 of pre-budget consultations. There's a lot of panels to go, I hate to tell you. So thank you, and we'll suspend for 5 minutes. I know the agenda says 5:30, but all the witnesses have been invited for 5, so we will start in 5 minutes' time with the second panel. Meeting suspended. We'll reconvene, and for the purposes of the record, pursuing to Standing Order 83-1, the committee will further discuss pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2018 budget, and we have a number of witnesses here. I think witnesses are aware that we want to try and hold your presentation to about 5 minutes if we could, and then we'll go to questions. To start then with the Assembly of First Nations, Mr. Wilson. Okay, I can hardly see you from here. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the committee for the opportunity to appear here today. I'd also thank the Algonquin Nation for allowing us to meet here on their unceded territory. My message for you today is that investing in First Nations, Canada's youngest and fastest growing demographic, makes economic sense for Canada. Many studies have demonstrated how closing the gap in socioeconomic outcomes for First Nations people would benefit Canada's economy. Most recently, a 2016 report from the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board has estimated that benefit at $27.7 billion per year, or 1.5% of GDP. We've provided the committee with copies of the AFN's pre-budget submission for 2018, which shows how to help make that gap closure happen. The numbers you see are large and perhaps surprising at first, but so are the gaps that we need to close. If eliminating those gaps is an economic benefit and the human cost of maintaining them is clearly unacceptable, then one must react with surprise not at the numbers in our submission, but rather at the fact that this gap is yet to be addressed. Each of the items in our submission is important. The gap in child welfare funding, for example, has been the subject of 3 orders from the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and I'd be happy to address questions about any of those. However, I want to focus my remaining time on the section that we called Investing in First Nation Governments. Canada tells us that the 2% cap on annual increases to First Nation budgets has been lifted, and we are very pleased to hear that, but the areas identified under that heading, band support funding, minor capital, operations and maintenance, and administration of income assistance, have yet to see an annual increase of more than 2% since 1997. The cumulative loss against inflation and population growth in those areas over 20 years is equal to the $9 billion identified in our submission for 2018-19. This is what it will take to redress the damage done, to build capacity in First Nation governments, as the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee of the House reported in its Default Prevention and Management Study in June of this past summer. Perhaps most importantly, this capacity is needed for effective administration of the programs and services that will help close the socioeconomic gap between First Nations citizens and other Canadians, to give effective use to the significant investments that we have seen in budgets 2016 and 2017. The AFN is working with the Government of Canada on options for a new fiscal relationship between Canada and First Nation governments. At the core of that work is the need to treat First Nation governments as governments, so that they can deliver results for their people, so that they can close the socioeconomic gap that exists between First Nation citizens and those in the rest of Canada. In order to support this, we must build the administrative and financial management capacity in First Nations governments that has been negatively affected by the underfunding of the past 20 years. Eliminating the socioeconomic gap will provide a net economic benefit to Canada, and it will save lives. Overcoming 20 years of neglect will cost $9 billion, and we urge you to recommend that investment. Thank you. Merci. Willan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, and I neglected to mention and begin to I thank all your organizations for the submissions you submitted in early August. I know that's not it's a fairly pressure cooker of a task to get it done that fast when we're not doing hearings till fall, but thank you. We need to go through that process in order to get translated and other things. The Appraisal Institute of Canada, Mr. McLean, who's the president-elect, and Mr. Len Castle, who's the chief executive officer. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to again appear before this committee. We are very pleased to present our members' concerns and perspectives and recommendations to the Standing Committee on Finance in the context of the 2018 pre-budget consultation process. The Appraisal Institute of Canada has over 5,400 members who provide unbiased opinions of value on residential, commercial, and all other types of real property. Our members are university educated and prepare their work in accordance with our Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. As a self-regulatory body, we have a strong focus on consumer protection. We maintain a robust disciplinary process and offer a mandatory professional liability insurance program to help protect consumers. To begin with, we would like to respond to the committee's question of what federal measures should be taken to help Canadians be more productive. There are, in fact, in our mind, three measures. First, the application of OSFI's B20 guidelines to all mortgage lending institutions. Second, mandating stronger valuation fundamentals for real estate-based investments offered to retail investors. And third, enhancing financial literacy amongst Canadians. Regarding the application of B20 guidelines to all mortgage lending institutions, we know that the majority of Canadian mortgage lending is still being done through federally regulated lenders, but the market share of non-federally regulated lenders continues to grow. Recent data from the Department of Finance showed that the market share of unregulated lenders grew from 6.6% in 2007 to 12.5% in 2015, and we believe this trend will continue. The reality is that despite initiatives to moderate the market, there are still many Canadians who are desperate and determined to enter the housing market. If borrowers are turned away by a federally regulated institution, they will often turn to other lenders to secure funding. Unfortunately, there is limited information on the full scope of who these lenders are or what their mortgage underwriting policies may be. Put another way, there is a growing share of the market that is not necessarily competing on the same basis and for whom the same regulatory oversight may not apply. This scenario, in our opinion, is a potential risk to our financial system. We do know of non-federally regulated lenders that apply very stringent underwriting approaches, both in terms of borrower qualifications and collateral valuation. But we're also aware of and are concerned with those that do not apply this rigor and extend mortgage in much higher risk scenarios. B20 has established an incredibly sound framework for underwriting that requires not only an assessment of the borrower's capacity and willingness to repay, but also a commitment to strong valuation fundamentals. As we have seen in other countries, the absence of this type of balanced and consistent approach can have a significant impact on the consumer and on the real estate market as a whole. AIC therefore recommends the expanded application of B20 guidelines to any and all organizations providing mortgage financing. We believe this will help level the playing field and will help to further stabilize the market. Secondly, AIC is concerned with the recent emergence of a range of real estate-backed investments, including syndicated mortgage offerings targeted at retail investors. While these types of investments present themselves as an interesting opportunity for retirees or those nearing retirement, we are concerned that these investors may not truly understand the inherent risks associated with the investment and that the reported value of the properties securing the investment may be inaccurate. We believe that on-site appraisals carried out by qualified professionals are the most effective way to determine the true market value of a real estate asset securing this or any other type of investment. Investors and regulators should ensure that these investment opportunities are properly vetted and that the necessary due diligence of risk tolerance and collateral valuation has been carried out. Third, there is a need to enhance financial literacy in the areas of mortgage lending. Although governments proactively educate Canadian consumers on issues relating to financial literacy, there continues to be confusion within the marketplace on the full range of fees associated with mortgage financing and refinancing, as well as the roles of various professionals involved in the transaction. A disclosure of all fees incurred as part of obtaining a loan should be a mandatory requirement for all lending institutions so that Canadians better understand the financial commitment they are making. This includes both the appraisal management fee and the appraisal fee. With regards to the committee's second question of what federal measures would help Canadian businesses to be more productive and competitive, for our members, the need to access reliable and affordable real estate data is essential to complete their valuations of real property that so well protect lenders and consumers. The creation of a federal housing statistics framework and a national property registry are initiatives that AIC welcomes and supports. While this data will be invaluable to governments as they develop effective housing policies, it will also be of great benefit to the industry. We therefore recommend that the National Property Registry be fully accessible to professional appraisers and to all other real estate professionals. Mr. Chairman, honourable members, we are privileged to have been invited here today to share the perspectives of our members. We would be pleased to respond to any questions or comments you or your colleagues may have. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much. Then turning to the Canadian Alliance of Student Association, Ms. Gadam-Seti.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, esteemed committee members, fellow witnesses, and members of the gallery. My name is Shifra Gadam-Seti, and I am the president of the Student Association at Mount Royal University. I am also the board chair of the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, commonly referred to as CASA. On behalf of CASA's 22 student members, representing over 250,000 students across post-secondary in Canada, I thank you for the opportunity to present our pre-budget priorities today. We know that a productive and competitive economy depends on a highly educated workforce. This is why students must be kept a priority when considering the future of Canada's economy. To ensure that students maximize their potential during and beyond their studies, we believe the government must provide support through three main pillars: ensuring that students are able to succeed throughout their education, encouraging student contributions to research and innovation, and facilitating smooth transitions to the workforce. To begin, student success depends on affordable yet high-quality textbook options that help them get the most out of their education. Unfortunately, the cost of textbooks remains a significant barrier for many, and one that isn't always fully covered through financial aid. In response to this issue, provinces like BC and Ontario have invested in new technology called Open Education Resources. OERs are freely accessible learning tools such as textbooks, lesson plans, or videos developed by instructors under an open copyright license. OERs can also be readapted to meet a diversity of student needs. Overall, the result has been incredibly positive for students. OERs have saved 40,000 students over $4 million in the last 5 years. This is why CASA recommends a pilot grant through the tri-agencies to incentivize students and faculty to develop OERs. After all, no student should be prevented from succeeding in their post-secondary education because they cannot afford textbooks. Succeeding in post-secondary also means accessing essential mental health accommodations and supports. We know that mental health issues tend to surface during post-secondary while students are away from family, friends, and support networks for the first time. Unfortunately, students also struggle against long wait times and significant costs for on- and off-campus supports. This includes the cost to obtain a professional assessment often required for academic accommodation. Left unaddressed, mental health problems and illnesses also have an enormous impact on the overall economy. We recommend that the Canada Student Loans Program provide funding to support the upfront costs of mental health assessments required for academic accommodations. This would ensure that students get the help that they need to succeed throughout their education while also building lifelong resiliency. We would also like to emphasize supporting student research and innovation. Students were encouraged by the significant increases in overall tri-agency research funding in Budget 2016. However, the overall proportion of funding dedicated to graduate students remains lower today than it was in 2011. This is why CASA, in partnership with the Quebec Students' Union, asks for new tri-agency funding specifically designated for graduate students. We would also like to see the proportion of graduate research funding return to the levels it held in 2011. We overwhelmingly encourage the use of Canada's Fundamental Science Review, also commonly referred to as the Naylor Report, as a blueprint for long-term support of science and research. The final pillar is aiding effective transition into the workforce. A key strategy for this is to provide students with program-relevant experiential learning opportunities as part of their education. Research has shown that students who participated in relevant paid work experience during their studies are almost twice as likely to get a job than those who didn't upon graduation. While the Canada Summer Jobs Program offers quality work experience, its focus on the summer is too limited. Expanding it to provide part-time jobs year-round better reflects the dynamic experience of a diverse student population. Upon graduation, students want to focus on successfully transitioning into the workforce. However, precarious youth employment and rising student loan interest rates make this extremely stressful and challenging. Students with Canada student loans are told that they have a 6-month non-repayment period before they have to start repaying their loan after graduation. Confusingly, they are accumulating interest throughout those 6 months. This unfairly burdens new graduates, especially since finding a job often takes at least 5 months, and the average student loan debt is approximately $26,000. CASA recommends the 6-month non-repayment period be made interest-free. This would provide basic relief for new graduates while allowing them to focus on their most important goal, looking for work that will maximize their potential. In closing, we believe that a highly educated and skilled population can accomplish great things given the right circumstances. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Canadian Home Builders Association, Mr. Kevin Lee, CEO. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. With some 21% of skilled workers in residential construction retiring over the next decade, productivity gains need to be an important part of our industry's future. We need to promote young people getting into the skilled trades. We need parity of esteem in Canada for trade paths compared to university paths. And once people are in the trades, we need harmonization of qualifications across Canada to promote labour mobility, and all of these have a federal leadership component. There are two key ways to look at productivity as it relates to housing. One is how the development of our communities affects the productivity of the entire economy in all sectors. And the second is how productivity within the housing sector can help its businesses and address housing affordability for Canadians. An efficient economy relies on the timely provision of quality housing that is affordable in locations that enable efficient movement of its citizens. The ability of our industry to supply this is largely determined by policies enacted at all 3 levels of government. We see costs to our economy and to the personal lives of Canadians as they spend hours each day in gridlock as they travel from where they can afford to live to where they have to work. But homeownership remains a cornerstone of the middle class. It has led to the financial well-being of the vast majority of Canadians and continue to do so. Yet we see more mortgage measures by federal players locking out first-time homebuyers. The problem is all these measures are demand-side actions when the big problems and potential solutions are on the supply side. Here are some alternative solutions. Firstly, the issue of supply needs to be properly documented with statistics, measures, and indicators. To truly understand what is driving up housing prices, we need to have deep dive data and analysis on the supply side in all urban centres. For example, at current trends, Canada would be 300,000 family-oriented units short over the next decade, and prices for those family-oriented houses that do exist will continue to escalate. We need to encourage the missing middle, medium-density, low-rise, mixed-income housing in walkable communities with ready access to transit. The government needs to track the type of housing and communities being approved so that the statistics can be used to change trends. The federal government also needs to tie its infrastructure investment to transit-oriented development plans to ensure proper density around transit nodes, to promote affordability and maximize ridership. It needs metrics to track these indicators. To support mobility in lower-income families, a portable housing benefit is required that is tied to people rather than social housing units, so people can easily move as new job opportunities arise rather than being tied to a housing unit they can't leave due to long waiting lists. The federal government needs to launch or support a Yes in My Backyard campaign to counter NIMBYism that so often delays or derails mixed-income projects in or near existing neighbourhoods. Government regulation and red tape delays need to be addressed. Bringing projects online has gotten much slower over the years, increasing costs and hampering productivity. A return to federal statistical tracking of the indicators related to this in urban centres can lead to improvement. Regarding codes, Canada already has excellent codes and standards that result in excellent housing. However, there are currently many social, health, and environmental aspects that groups are seeking to incorporate into the codes. Continual improvement is, of course, always desirable. However, this must also be done in ways that are affordable. While the national code process does support cost-impact analysis to a degree, it is time for a true federal priority to pursue a simple goal. Let's build better houses for the same price or less. If there is a need to address a given issue with the code, then it needs to be done in a way that doesn't increase costs. If there isn't such a means, then R&D and innovation is needed to find a solution before regulating it. Given today's affordability challenge, this is a position that should be taken by the federal government at large and with respect to the National Building Code, and it should be supported by federal R&D dollars leveraged with those of the private sector. Which leads to the federal investment in housing R&D, which has been woefully lagging in recent years, especially compared to investments in other industries which are much smaller components of the economy and employ much less than the over 1 million jobs created by residential construction. This type of federal investment is particularly important in housing because the industry is principally made up of small businesses. Also, most innovation in construction is non-proprietary, so public sector investment in R&D is very appropriate as a federal role. And of course, speaking of small businesses and productivity, we must address the current proposed corporate tax changes. The residential construction industry is made up of mostly small family-run businesses. 83% of companies in the industry have 9 employees or less. The proposed changes will make it harder for families that devote so much of their collective energy and resources to a small business to succeed, the same entrepreneurs that seek increased productivity inherently every day.
I want you to slow down just a little.
Okay.
Where translation is going to hit the booth shortly.
Well, that's good. I've only got a couple of paragraphs, so they'll be able to breathe easy in a second. The tax change directly propose a disincentive to entrepreneurs to take on the risk-reward challenge that starting and owning a business entails, and they will likely drive more work into the underground economy, resulting in less, not more tax revenue, and unfortunately undermining hard work by our association in collaboration with the Canada Revenue Agency to fight the underground economy. We need and surely can find a better approach. I'll conclude by reinforcing that innovation and productivity certainly matter in residential construction. We have a uniquely Canadian history of industry-government collaboration in this area, and we need to build on this for a successful future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if you're ever going to mention the underground economy, but you did get to it. Chemistry Industry Association of Canada, Bob Masterson, President and CEO, and David Podrusky, Vice President, Business and Economics. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Easter. This evening, we'd like to speak to this committee about the significant opportunities for investment and economic growth within Canada's chemistry sector, along with our thoughts on what Budget 2018 can do to help ensure this opportunity is realized in the coming months and years. Our industry is a vital component of the Canadian economy. We're the 3rd largest manufacturing sector with over $53 billion of annual shipments. Nearly 73% of that is exported, and that makes us the 2nd largest manufacturing exporter. And like many people, I'm sure most of you don't give much thought to the role of chemistry in your lives, but if you look around this room, 95% of everything we touch every day is impacted by the business of chemistry. It's everywhere. Our industry is also very highly skilled. We employ more than 86,000 Canadians, and 38% of those are university graduates. That places us at the 2nd highest percentage of university graduates to the IT sector. More importantly, perhaps for this committee, our sector has a tremendous track record in providing economic and wage growth across the entire business cycle. In its recent report, your colleagues on the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology acknowledged this and identified chemistry as one of the strongest performing manufacturers in employment growth since 2010. Globally, the chemistry industry is very large and very fast growing, with annual growth rates well in excess of global GDP in each of the last 10 years. And moreover, with growing populations in Asia, demands for middle-class lifestyles, and demands worldwide for more sustainable outcomes, the chemistry industry is poised to triple its volumes of shipments in the next 20 years. Now, much of that production growth has taken place in Asia, but in the United States, chemistry is also the fastest growing manufacturing sector. In the last 5 years, there have been over 300 global scale investments in the chemistry business in the United States, totaling over $250 billion Canadian. The National Association of Manufacturers says that that's the largest single fastest growing sector of manufacturing economy, responsible for over half of the investment. Our concern is we share many of the same benefits that the American chemistry industry does, and if you look at our historical track record over the last 40 years, we should have expected to see 10% of that investment. We should have seen 25 to 30 projects worth $25 to $30 billion of new investment. Unfortunately, however, we've lagged well behind our historical share. We've seen more like 1%, $2.5 to $3 billion of investment. Our view, this should be a concern to this committee. Though we have missed out on the past wave of investments, the global growth I talked about is continuing, and we do think that Canada is better poised to capture part of the next wave. And the reason I say that specifically is that the governments of Ontario and Alberta have prioritized investment growth in the chemistry sector, and there's currently 3 major projects accounting for nearly $12 billion under active consideration in those jurisdictions. And those are only projects that are publicly announced. Now, over much of the last year, we have urged the federal government to heed the investment opportunity in our sector and take note of those provinces' determination to capture this new investment. We continue to stress the importance of ensuring Ottawa's economic priority sectors align with those of the important provinces of Ontario and Alberta and British Columbia and Quebec, so that all our oars are pulling in tandem in the same direction. Budget 2017 did provide some important signals that the government was listening. We were pleased to see the launch of the Strategic Innovation Fund and its broadening to include high-growth advanced manufacturing sectors, including chemistry. While welcome, however, the Strategic Innovation Fund alone will not be sufficient to attract sustained investment growth as seen south of the border. To that end, we've submitted to this committee our report, our recommendations, the 4 factors we believe are necessary to help secure investments, both those awaiting final decision and also future opportunities under consideration. And these recommendations relate specifically to Objective 2 of your study, and we'll mention them briefly and then look forward to your questions to elaborate further. But first, we do believe the Strategic Innovation Fund is important, and we're asking for increased investment by the Government of Canada to ensure this fund is capable of matching funding from the province's own strategic funding initiatives. Second, we're requesting the 10-year extension of the accelerated capital cost allowance currently in place be made permanent for manufacturing and processing, and moreover, that it be broadened to include additional activities, eligible activities, at least to match what's available to our sector south of the border. Third, we're recommending, in part to attract that additional foreign investment that Minister Marneau and his Barton Advisory Council has called for, we're recommending 100% accelerated capital cost allowance be introduced for a minimum of 1 full business cycle of 7 years to specifically apply to resource and manufacturing upgrading. And lastly, we recommend implementing a special manufacturing and processing tax rate in the form of a 2-point M&P reduction. I stop there. Thank you very much for your interest, and we do look forward to elaborating on and providing some justification for our recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Charlotte Bell, President and CEO of the Tourist Industry Association of Canada. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chair, honourable members of the committee. Bonsoir, Monsieur le Président et membres du comité.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee members.
Canada, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about how the government and our industry can work together to enhance the competitiveness of Canadian tourism and increase opportunities for businesses and Canadians working in the tourism sector. Our pre-budget submission includes recommendations that we believe will lead to a stronger and more competitive tourism industry, one that will be able to fulfill the new tourism vision's goals for the industry that were set out by the Minister of Small Business and Tourism, a vision that we applaud the Minister for putting forward. And that includes working towards our common goal of re-entering the top 10 most visited countries in the world. In order to get there, we feel more has to be done to enhance Canada's competitiveness within the global tourism marketplace. We've provided recommendations in areas ranging from immigration reform and cost competitiveness to continued support for tourism marketing. Today, I'll first address issues raised by the committee. People are the cornerstone of the tourism industry. Tourism employs 1.7 million Canadians, most under the age of 35. While tourism is a large provider of jobs for Canadians and Canadian youth in particular, many businesses and communities who rely on tourism are struggling to attract and retain employees. While this is a significant issue in resort and remote communities, even urban areas like Niagara Falls report that, despite high regional unemployment rates, significant labour shortages exist in those regions. We're making every effort to attract more tourists. Let's ensure we have the resources to serve them well. There are steps the government can take to bridge this gap, and foremost is legitimizing tourism and service sector jobs by removing high-skilled and low-skilled categorizations for businesses and job seekers trying to access federal programs. There's a perception that tourism jobs are low quality and low paying. This is simply not the case. The reality is that hourly wages are frequently higher than minimum wages, with additional benefits such as housing included in many offers. And there are myriad examples of top executives in this sector who started in entry-level positions and quickly worked their way to very successful careers. We've been told that Canada has many young, unemployed people, and we should just hire those people to fill those vacancies. But mobility and housing shortages in certain areas are real barriers in addition to negative perceptions about those jobs. We've been told that places like Banff are beautiful and all young Canadians should want to work there in such beautiful places. It's true enough, but this doesn't drive a significant amount of labour to those areas where housing and mobility continue to be issues. Studies repeatedly show that relocation is a low priority for Canadians, especially in urban areas, and there are few government incentives to encourage relocation. This is an area where specific programs to address those issues would help. We need to encourage young people to experience Canada and its regions through work programs in sectors experiencing labour shortages. We had seen some reprieve with allowances for seasonal workers, but these temporary measures have not helped long-term employment issues. It would be advantageous for business owners to be able to access a reliable source of labour, and providing a path to citizenship for Canadian experienced foreign workers would also help. Other than employment, we want to reiterate from our last appearance at the Finance Committee the importance of cost competitiveness to our business. Canada is a popular destination, but the cost of travel to and within the country remains high. In today's increasingly competitive travel marketplace, taxes, levies, and fees on tourism products inflate the price of tourism goods to international buyers, and Canada competes with the world to attract visitors. According to the World Economic Forum Travel Competitive Report, Canada ranks 97 out of 141 countries in terms of cost competitiveness. Tourism is a top economic driver for the Canadian economy. In addition to proactive policy measures and increased marketing budgets, we've seen Canada's brand and visitation numbers increase substantially over the past couple of years. This said, our favourable currency has also helped make Canada more attractive to visitors. As the dollar continues to rise, our ability to maintain and grow those numbers will be challenged. As such, we urge the government to take measures to address cost-competitive issues. We've made several recommendations in our submission that address both the committee's specific question as well as how to strengthen Canada's overall competitiveness on the international stage. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bell. Turning then to questions, I think we'll drop to 5-minute rounds. That way we can get 8 questioners on. Mr. Sabera. Pierre. Pierre, do you want to chair first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome everybody. Thank you for your presentations. I'd just like to start off with the Appraisal Institute. In terms of looking at B20 and B21 and extending that to non-federally regulated mortgage lending, would that in any way curtail consumers or individuals from obtaining housing and slow down housing demand in Canada?
It's our belief that leveling the playing field is part of having a balanced marketplace. And certainly what we are seeing now is people pursuing loans through non-federally regulated lenders, often at terms that are certainly not competitive, and we're concerned about those potentially higher risk borrowers coming into the market, and in fact that exacerbating an accelerated demand. Okay. We believe leveling the playing field is in the best interest and the long-term interest of the marketplace.
Okay, and I want to just add, I do agree with the financial literacy component of your brief in terms, and I think this applies across the board for all Canadians and not just seniors or new home buyers, but I think financial literacy's got to be a part of it. I know the Ontario provincial government has mandated it in the education curriculum now for high school students, so I applaud that. So I do agree with you more. Moving on to the home builders, Kevin, we've chatted several times. Hi, how are you? And welcome. We've chatted several times. On the rental side, and that's obviously very important for everyone because we have home ownership rates in Canada about 68%, so a lot of folks don't own their home, they rent. The purpose-built rental and the two recommendations you had, how big of a bump would we have in terms of these recommendations you put in place for rental building?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. How big of a bump?
A bump. If these measures were put in place, how much would this assist entrepreneurs or developers from building rental buildings?
We don't have statistical analysis in terms of how big the bump will be, but we do know that there has been an increase in the desire to build purpose-built rental, but that these measures that aren't in place yet are preventing it. So the opportunity to move into the rental market would be greatly enhanced by being able to do that.
Okay. And the final thing, the parity of esteem factor. I often joke around with my residents and the stakeholders I have that if I wasn't in this career that I'd go and open my own business and become a stonemason or a bricklayer, because I could probably do quite well because there aren't many out there, and the ones that are out there are retiring. And I think we've put a lot of money in. We put $85 million in for apprenticeships in our budget for on the labor side. Is there anything else that we can be doing? And I think it is maybe just changing a mindset on the parity esteem to encourage young folks to look at the trades as a career that you could actually do well financially.
Well, I think the words that you just expressed are exactly the type of messaging that we need to get out to all Canadians, young people in schools, parents in particular, who see university as the only route to success and trades as being a secondary option. Obviously, university is a good route to success, but so too are going into the skilled trades with the opportunity to be successful both in terms of income when you start out and then later on being successful potentially owning your own business. So I think communications at the federal level nationally and helping to support that messaging of this is a great option for your future, going to a community college or an institute and getting your skilled trade requirements taken care of so you can have a good career is a great opportunity, and we just need to communicate that.
Chair, do I have time for one more, or am I?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair's changed. Mr. Masterson, the chemical industry, whether it's down in Texas or whether it's centered in, if it's ethylene production or polypropylene production, and I covered that industry in New York for a bunch of years on the corporate finance side. So I remember all the mergers, Union Carbide and Equochem and Dow Chemical and all that kind of stuff. Very value added. How important is the permanency of the accelerated capital cost depreciation? The U.S. has it in place. We don't, but it's in there right now.
Well, it's now at the stage where it is very important because we've had 3 years, if I believe is correct, and if you think of the types of investments you've talked about in the chemistry sector, you're 7 years from thinking about it, final investment decision, building, commissioning, and reaching commercial operation. And if you can't guarantee that that measure's there, you can't build that into your business case. So, 3 years ago, we were okay with 10 years. We're now getting near the point where what's remaining of that 10-year window is not enough. But the second factor is also important, which is looking at the eligibility class. Class 43 right now in Canada is just machinery and equipment. And the United States, it's a much broader coverage. It includes site preparation, roads, curbs, supporting infrastructure for machinery and equipment. Basically, everything that's invested in, except for the permanent buildings on the site, is eligible for the capital cost allowance.
Mr. Sorbera, we're about 30 seconds over time, unfortunately. But
thank you.
Yeah. And now we turn to Mr. Richards.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you for your presentations. Certainly, I do have some questions. I'll start with you, Charlotte. Given that tourism is so important in my riding, and certainly something that I've worked with closely with your industry, and so I wanted to start with you. But I wanted to ask specifically. I know one of the questions that you were asked was about competitiveness for businesses and some of the things that you would that would be considered there. And obviously, I think when we look at the proposals that we've seen from the Liberal government in terms of the small business tax changes, is something that I have a serious concern about in terms of competitiveness for Canadian businesses, but also for our economy in general, for for our communities, the health of our communities, in terms of the contributions that small businesses make, not only to the economy but also to, you know, local sports teams, charities, and all of these things. And those are things that need to be considered fully and properly before making such massive major changes. And I know that for tourism, small businesses plays an important role. In fact, about 10% of small and medium-sized businesses in Canada actually are in the tourism sector, so obviously very significant. And I wondered if you could maybe comment on whether you think those tax changes what kind of impact you think they would have on the tourism industry. Do you think that would be a negative impact? And also, given that these consultations took place over the summer, sort of in the tourism high season, I'm sure many tourism operators haven't had the opportunity yet to really fully digest and consider them. So do you think there's been sufficient time given to consult with the tourism industry on these changes, or should there be an extended period of time for consultation on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the question. There's no doubt we've been looking at these proposals and trying to assess what the impact might be on our membership. We are hearing back from our members. A number of them have questions. Some of them are unsure whether they are impacted by the changes. Others are asking questions about, for instance, how family-run businesses would be taxed when passing along the business to their children. Questions about the reasonable test, treatment of passive income. So generally the same types of issues that you're hearing from other sectors. You know, we are still working through trying to figure out what these impacts are going to mean for this industry. Yes, in fact, the consultation period has occurred during the high season, so it is a little bit challenging for our members to focus on these issues at this time. That said, I have been able to reach out and receive feedback from a number of people. And we have reached out also to the Minister's office and have asked for some clarity on these issues, and we're working through all of these issues with the Minister's office and feel that at least we are being heard, and hopefully we can get some comfort on some of this.
Thanks, Charlotte. Now, I know, Mr. Lee, your organization was certainly has been vocal about some of the concerns that you have. And I would assume many builders are. There's a lot of smaller businesses amongst it could be family-run businesses and things like that. Could you maybe speak to your concerns or your thoughts around these changes? And whether you feel there's been proper consultation.
Yeah, I can certainly say that it's the number one issue raising its head in our home builders associations all across the country. Lots and lots of extreme concern over it because the nature of the business is it is small family-run business. A lot of the planning is around succession planning to children and transfer the business, and it appears that these changes would make that less attractive and sometimes not really feasible. Passive investment is a critical part of our industry because you need money on the side waiting for opportunities, particularly on the land development side and even on the on builders who are looking to, at the right price, at the right point, make an investment to buy land and lots to be able to build on. So yeah, an awful lot of concerns. Also a lot of concerns around being able to properly engage other members of the family in the family business, including all the sacrifices that are made by the whole family in getting a company up and running and keeping on going. And concern that they're being treated like they're employees, as if they are employees, and they're not, and they take on all kinds of risk, and it's part of what makes our economy run. So we are hearing it an awful lot, and therefore passing the news on.
Good, thank you. And maybe Mr. Landcastle, I know for many appraisers, having worked in the real estate industry, I worked with builders, but I also worked with appraisers. And I know many of them are, they can be small operations. I don't know if that's amongst your membership, but often father-son. And I know in one case I had a father-daughter operation. So I wonder if this is something you've heard much about from your members and what kind of concerns you might have about these types of changes.
Our members work in a wide variety of environments, everything from very large employers, institutional employers, public sector employers, down to, as you've described, small businesses. It's certainly not, it's an issue our members are aware of. We support the notion of tax fairness, but also recognize the need to make sure that measures are balanced in such a way that they don't impinge on those small businesses. But I would say it has not been a top priority issue for our membership at this stage.
I would assume, yeah, probably for some of the smaller operations, they might be a bit more of a concern, obviously, than for some of the other ones, obviously, for sure, right? Yeah.
Again, as an individual member organization, our members, some of them are employed, some work for the Government of Canada, work for provincial governments. For others who do own and operate their own business, it would be a greater degree of focus for them.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Dussault.
Mr. Dussault, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have a first question for Mr. Wilson. One thing we take for granted in Ottawa, at least in Sherbrooke, is clean drinking water. I'm not worried when I open the tap at home in Sherbrooke, no matter where I am, where I find myself. I know the water will be good, but it's not the case throughout the country. So with regard to the Prime Minister's promise to eliminate all of the boil water notices in First Nations, the boil water advisories, this promise, well, it's a concern of mine. Might you tell us if the situation has been improved since the Prime Minister arrived, our new Prime Minister arrived?
Is in fact the correct answer. What happens is that while some have actually been alleviated, new ones have arisen. And what we see in many cases is a periodic solution that is temporary. This spring's high water flooding situation was problematic in a number of communities that creates a clean water issue. There are others that are very long-standing and have yet to been addressed, and so, although the statistics that I have seen from the government, the measure of their progress, would show a small diminution of the totality. At this stage, it is difficult to imagine a full elimination of all of the boil water advisories across the First Nation communities in Canada within the timeline that was envisioned. There are a number of steps that can be taken to address that. In part, we have spoken to that in our submission with regard to the investments in operations maintenance. One of the largest cost areas for water treatment centers, treatment plants, is in fact not the construction, although that is a significant capital outlay, but the operations and maintenance. Secondarily to that, the education and training of people locally who might take those positions on and continue that work, which has, of course, a relationship to the underfunding in education and jobs and skills training. And so there are specific investments that can help, I think, to create a more stable foundational structure for the eventual elimination of the boil water advisories that we are not taking specifically by tackling the individuated problems one at a time that have arisen, or necessarily by constructing perhaps a water treatment plant in those areas where one is needed. We have to actually get underneath that, understand what the larger cost drivers are in addressing the problem, and invest there. And there we have identified the largest one being operations and maintenance.
Merci. Juste pour le temps qui me reste, peut-être Madame Gadam.
With the rest of my time, I would like to question the representative of the student associations, Ms. Gadam Sethi. We know that there were loans of $350 million. These were loans without interest. Student loans, and the government is constantly being attacked in this regard with the granting of interest-free loans to students. My question is a simple one. Do you believe that Canadian students would deserve to have interest-free loans like we see in some other sectors?
We are trying to help students at this point in terms of loans and grants and focusing on those that need them most. And so at this point, we've seen really encouraging models come forward in Ontario and New Brunswick, and I'm under the impression that Alberta as well is trialing the idea of targeting financial aid in the form of non-repayable grants based on a sliding income model. And so at this point, we're not really looking at equality because the need is so, or we're not really looking at equity necessarily, but we're looking at equality because the need is so great. And if we were to consider options like that without first addressing the backlog of barriers, especially financial, for students to enter the post-secondary, I think that we would be backtracking a little bit and having to reconsider those options eventually. So at this point, we're really, really focused on making sure that access is equitable across all communities.
Thank you. Thank you all. Ms. O'Connell.
Mr. Chair, following up, Ms. Geddes-Meddy, if I'm saying that correctly. You spoke about mental health assessments and that recommendation. I was just curious, since part of the study is focused on, or really the objective of the study is focused on recommendations that we can make to the minister around growth and the impediments to it. And certainly if someone can't complete their education, that could be an impediment to growth. So I'm just curious if you're aware of jurisdictions that have done this, and if there are any measurables in terms of like success rates, that if you have the mental health assessments and services up front, you know, the ability for that person to then complete their studies and go on and be successful. Do you have any measurables to that?
Absolutely. I myself am a registered nurse as well as a student returning back to post-secondary, so I've seen the impact that this can have firsthand. And speaking specifically within the post-secondary realm, currently we're asking the federal government for help because across the country access to such supports is not equitable. And we think that this is a shared responsibility. So while some provinces might be able to better offer supports, others aren't. And we want to make sure, just as students, for example, are able to access financial aid in terms of grants for physical disabilities and any sort of assessments associated with that, or aids associated with that, we want to make sure that mental health is prioritized just as much as physical health. And we've seen incredible success in terms of student success accessing those granting programs through the Canada Student Grant Program, and we would like to see that expanded to include mental health as well.
Thank you. Mr. Masterson, your third recommendation for the 100% ACCA minimum one full business cycle, can you maybe just explain this a little bit further in terms of what's the type of, I guess, you know, I'm not in manufacturing, so what is the type of kind of investment that would be a typical one? I know you somewhat spoke about this with my colleague, Mr. Sobera, but what is somewhat the, I think this is quite interesting, so what is somewhat the cost and then the, what I'll call the reward on the other side, and how that measures in productivity?
Well, the opportunity and the reward, as I talked about, is getting our historic and perhaps even greater share of an immense quantity investment into Canada. We've heard Minister Marneau and the Barton Advisory Council talk about Canada falling basically woefully short on where we should be with foreign direct investment. And so we're providing some advice on what levers can be pulled. What's the reward? You're talking about an individual project, anywhere between $6 to $10 billion Canadian of new investment, thousands of jobs during manufacturing, hundreds of jobs for 40 years thereafter. Turning to the specifics of 100% ACCA and the benefit back, cost and benefit back to the government, I'll turn to Mr. Podruzny, who's our tax expert.
So we have a study on file that's listed in our submission. What happens, and I'll pick a smaller one, Bob's picked some big ones, but a $4 billion investment that's under active consideration, it will take about 5 years to construct. And in the meantime, all of that capital, all of that investment is inactive. But if the companies could recover some of that, it would, in terms of rapid write-off against other expenses, it would allow them to borrow, in that particular case, per $1 billion, about $220 million less right up front. That cash flow allows you to make that much more investment. It's just a good way to incent the industry and yet get all of that taxes back within the next year.
That was my question. So it's not a full write-off, it's just deferring payment essentially.
Precisely.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. That's helpful. And 1 minute, thank you. Mr. Landcastle, I have a question that is just, I'm curious, it might not be in your purview or part of what your organization is looking at, but in terms of appraisals, I have a concern, or I'm a little bit worried in some of the hot markets, you know, the appraisals actually then lead to assessment values and property values. Is your organization involved at all in terms of making recommendations to at the provincial level in terms of, I think in your brief or in your testimony you spoke about ensuring that they're accurate appraisals and maybe not just reactions to specific hot markets. Are you doing any work in terms of advocacy, the provincial level, to make sure that that's being reflective so property taxes, for example, are not also being tied to just hot market bubbles? Again, I'm not sure if it's within your purview, I'm just kind of curious.
A significant portion of our membership actually works in the assessment community for provincial assessment authorities and for municipal assessment authorities across the country. One of the elements in our professional standards is a new standard for mass appraisal, which basically is the methodology that is applied to arrive at assessed values. So obviously our organization is working very closely with provincial governments and municipal governments across the country to help make sure that those assessments are as accurate as can be possibly accommodated within a mass appraisal environment. You're never going to get a value that is going to be as accurate as an individual assessment and appraisal of a property at a point in time. However, the application of a strong methodology for mass appraisal can help to make sure that there is a higher degree of accuracy. It's always really important to recognize as well that any appraisal, whether it be an individual appraisal or a mass appraisal, is a point-in-time valuation, and markets can fluctuate, as you've noted. And it really then falls to municipalities and provincial assessment authorities to respond to changing realities within their marketplace. But certainly our organization works actively with all of those as required to help support that process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Albas.
Chair, thank you to all of our witnesses for your testimony here today. I'm going to start with Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, you've mentioned the need for governments to start getting serious about supply. So, federal government, GST, HST, depending on which province, could we not just incentivize by raising the amount you get, the rebate you get for housing?
Yes, certainly. That, when it was introduced many years ago, 1990s, early 90s, I do believe, was supposed to be introduced with the intent that it would get adjusted as prices went up, so too would that rebate. Of course, prices have clearly gone up, as we're talking about, and it has never changed. So it is something that we have advocated for a couple of decades, so yes.
And as more housing gets built, then that means also we'll get more GST revenue. So just that's one way the government could easily incentivize it. And again, that would make affordable housing, regardless if it's for social housing or just new housing stock at market price, that would be a good solution. Now, you've also mentioned about the impact that the proposed changes Mr. Morneau is contemplating and doing a consultation on. You know, I've been speaking with people in my riding, and some developers have said, much as have you said, it takes 3 years sometimes for them to be able to bring a project to completion. 3 years of finding the property, getting the right designs, doing the public process, all that stuff, everything you've said about that slows everything up. And then what happens, you finally can build. But during that time, most of the money that was used as the down payment, so to speak, or for the financing is in a passive instrument to make sure you don't have churn by inflation. So they'll hold everything from money market funds to bonds to stocks, depending on whatever the selection process is. Now, I've been told by certain financial institutions that they will factor in tax liabilities and basically lend less, because if someone has, let's say, $1 million set aside for a new project, they will say, okay, if you have a tax liability, you have to factor that in. So I think there's a lot of hidden costs we have towards your industry specifically. In Kelowna, we do a lot of jobs come straight from construction. So when someone says that developers and construction companies, the way they hold cash, or the way they hold, I should say, passive assets, is going to discourage them to do that, does that worry you about overall construction then going down as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a critical part of how the organizations operate. And frankly, 3 years in some jurisdictions would be enviable to others, because in some places it takes longer than 3 years to get product online. It can be, almost as much as a decade in some of the more complicated and complex areas.
If more money is going towards paying taxes and that's less towards actually building buildings, that means less jobs. Do you think that there's a direct correlation there between someone's ability to save, to invest in a new development, as well as to be able to put people to work?
We do. We think there's a direct correlation to less jobs, less small businesses, less local businesses. So it's a big risk.
Okay, so and you're speaking specifically on these new proposals regarding passive investment. They will have a direct and real impact, not just on the owners of these companies, but their employees.
That's correct.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd also like just to talk to Ms. Gadam-Massetti. Thank you very much for your work here. I've actually taken some courses recently. One was a macroeconomics course, one was a micro. The micro actually had an open source textbook that actually had many Canadian examples in it, because it was, I guess, some professors across Canada decided to work and put that in. And the macro actually was an e-book that was paid for. And I actually found that if something was available in between, where there was a little more professionalism in the open source, but there was a lot of, again, Canadian context. So I certainly appreciate your suggestion to see more investments for basic. Now, it's my understanding that professors, and I think most colleges and universities, have very stringent rules that say you have to buy textbooks that are in the United Kingdom language, or I should say English, and not American English. Have you heard that?
I cannot confirm that.
Okay, because some publishers have actually said that makes it more difficult for them to be, because they then have to reprocess and republish a similar textbook that was made in the United States. Words like labor or whatnot that have a slightly different spelling here in Canada. So that might be something you might want to talk to the provinces as well.
Absolutely.
There, Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the presenters here today. Very interesting discussions. My first question is to Mr. Wilson. I'm looking at the presentation that you made, and there's rather significant investment that's going to be required as per your organization's calculations. And there's probably a lot more that could be added to this. I represent the Northwest Territories, and I also work with the other regions. And the Aboriginal people in the Yukon is probably about 35–40%. In Northwest Territories, half of my constituents are Indigenous, and in Nunavut we're probably at 80%. So the AFN does not represent these numbers. You're only talking on reserve, right? Are you talking about all the Indigenous peoples across the country, or are you talking about or just the on reserve?
Our calculations are based on nations, including those in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. As the organization represents the chiefs and the views of the chiefs of all 634 First Nations across the country, and so our calculations are based to include those in your writing as well.
Okay, so you're looking at a new programs that will allow for off-reserve access to these dollars, because right now most of the programs you can't get them in the north. The $8 billion that was announced does not apply to the Northwest Territories or any of the northern jurisdictions.
The reserve on and off reserve distinction I quite well understand in the Northwest Territories does not apply, but we have First Nation governments in the Northwest Territories, and our estimates are based on what the governments tell us is necessary and what's actually transferred to them.
That's good
for their people, regardless of where they reside.
All right, that's really good to hear. And I want to focus a little bit more on the housing issue, because housing is probably the #1 issue in my riding at every meeting, regardless of what the focus is on the discussion. Housing will come to the surface. And 50% of my population is Indigenous, and a lot of what we have in terms of social issues can be attributed to the housing conditions. Studies have shown if we could fix the housing problem, 50% of our social issues will go away. And so I was really glad to see what you had captured in your presentation about the need for a national housing strategy. I think that's a good move. We're really trying to engage. And I find that we really have to do a lot more to try to focus on affordable housing. And I think that's an issue right across Canada. We have many communities that are situated close to major projects. For us, the best program for Aboriginal people is a good job. But we still have systems that are clogged because our public communities, Aboriginal communities, are designed for a social system, and the social system doesn't work well for people that got jobs. We have, for example, in one of the communities that I just visited, that's almost all Aboriginal, 200 people working at the mine, and they're still all in social housing. It's clogging up the system. So I'm hoping that we're going to try to find a mechanism in the National Housing Strategy that will work for us in the North and work for the Aboriginal communities. But I'm curious why, and maybe because you don't have the members, but you don't have an Indigenous plank or a focus, not a mention at all. And I think there's going to be a need for a strategy for Indigenous housing throughout all organizations that deal with Aboriginal people, but including yours as a national organization.
Yeah, and I think that particularly when it comes to the North, there are huge opportunities, particularly on the modular housing side of things, and we've just created a new council focusing on modular housing panelized construction, which would be particularly applicable for moving into remote communities with short construction seasons and that sort of thing, and making sure that the technologies are appropriate. But as you also mentioned, there's a huge need for affordable solutions, and by that I mean not social housing at all, but things that are cheaper to build and construct and get up there. And I think that as part of the national housing strategy, as part of the federal approach, we really need to focus on this. We have housing affordability issues in every part of Canada. Nowhere is it more extreme than in the North, and we need to really focus on research and innovation, putting Canada back to be a leader in this area like it was. Frankly, through the 80s and 90s, Canada led the world in cold climate building science for residential construction. We've fallen behind. We've underinvested at a time when, now we have affordability crunches, and we know the challenges of the First Nations people. So it is an opportunity to take a federal leadership role, reinvest, and help find the solutions. And the industry has always had a great relationship with the federal government in all of these R&D programs, and we would look forward to continuing that.
Thank you. Thank you both. We have time for two more questioners. Before we get there, Ms. Ged Msadi, you had mentioned a pilot grant to develop the open educational resources. I will admit I don't know what open educational resources is. How would you see that been done, and how would you see the federal government involved?
So currently, maybe I'll take just a quick 30 seconds to explain open education resources a little bit better. Traditionally, we look at learning materials as textbooks. Textbooks come from publishers. They have authors. Those authors are compensated for their work. And then in an academic setting, whether it is in a college, a polytech, a university, whenever those materials are used, they often become outdated in 5 to 7 years. So even if there are minor changes in materials, students are forced to buy a newer edition because of a bunch of a variety of competing interests, both with the publisher, the professor, the university itself. We are now seeing a trend where students are choosing whether or not to purchase educational materials, and that is completely dependent on how successful they are in the course. And so when we talk about the piloting grant and the reason we're asking for a federal strategy, larger provinces with perhaps a higher density of post-secondary educational institutions, Alberta, BC, Ontario, they have an appetite, but also the manpower and the resources to dedicate small operating grants to begin projects like this. So we have eCampus Ontario, we have BC Campus, Campus Alberta existed for a duration of time, and this allows sort of seed funding for professors to be incentivized to be compensated for their work and put it out under open copyright. So this work then doesn't have to exist under copyright laws. It's not legislated in the same way. Professors are able to take it, adapt it specifically to a course if they need to do that. Some professors will undertake updating resources and then republishing them to the main campus website, where other peers review them, so the material is quality and it is scholarly, and students do get quality for their access to this resource. And with the federal strategy, we hope that provinces who don't necessarily have the ability to invest are able to then, students in those provinces are able to access these resources as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. If we could go to about 4 minutes.
Good. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Maybe I'll just sort of return where I left off, I guess, at the last opportunity I had. Mr. Lee, you'd mentioned, some of the concerns that you had about the small business tax changes. But I wonder if you could maybe elaborate a bit for me in terms of, particularly for the smaller builders, the family-run builders, particularly where you've got several generations, or at least a couple of generations involved in the business. Maybe if you could just describe for me, the kinds of impacts that you would think they would see in terms of the jobs that might be lost, impacts that might be created on many of your members that are the smaller builders. Could you maybe just describe that a bit better for me?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty typical for members of our organization, builders, renovators, to have family-operated businesses where different members of the family are participating, husband and wife. Very common for one spouse to be the on-site person and the other person to be doing the books, family members participating in different ways, trying to grow the business. And also looking for the future in terms of also protecting against downturns. As we know, housing is very cyclical. So the ability to put away investment for a rainy day when maybe times are not going to be so lean, because you tend to be not eligible for unemployment insurance or anything like that in those instances, nor do most entrepreneurs, even if they set up their business, to magically be in that position. They don't want to. They're not that kind of people. They want to be self-sufficient. They're also looking at their retirement savings and different vehicles that they can use for that, because again, they're not on pensions and RSPs only go so far. So all of this is part of it. And then you're also typically building a family business that you want to get your children involved in, if they actually want to work with you, and then pass it on to them at one point. And so, any changes in taxation that are going to make that less desirable or even less feasible all run into this, which really begs the question, are we still going to be encouraging people to get into this type of entrepreneurial position, run the family business, or are they going to say, what, forget it, I'll just get a regular job, and then do we lose entrepreneurial spirit?
So would it be fair to say that you see these changes as potentially harming the ability for someone to pass their business down to the next generation of their family, and you're saying that these changes could potentially result in the attraction to actually start a business and employ people being something that we would be discouraging with those kinds of changes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, from what we're seeing, this has the potential to do all of that. So, an ongoing consultation away to, if we want to look at the tax system, let's look at it in its entirety and make sure we address the right issues and don't have unintended consequences, if you will, for small businesses in Canada.
Thank you. Is there a little time, Mr. Chair?
No, that's it. Mr. Picard.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, since you are going to it. Previous experiences or previous slides brought me to meet let's say the darker side of the construction business. And since you mentioned the magical word of underground economy, do you think that what is not declared or declared incorrectly, if we have a change of culture, of behavior, what we can gain to clean the market would more than sufficiently compensate for all the needs you're looking for in terms of new money?
In terms of, the simple word is yes in many ways. What we've been looking at in terms of, for example, we've been big proponents of coming back with some form of home renovation tax credit around, targeted around key policy objectives. It could be energy efficiency, it could be aging in place, as was put in. It could be to help first-time home buyers with their renovation jobs when they buy a fixer-upper, because that's all they could afford and they want to fix it up. And we've done assessments based on the transition and change of culture. And when you do a tax credit program, you are forcing people to get a receipt so that they can get their tax credit. And just based on that, you would bring enough on board that you would, in terms of additional tax revenue, that if you got that cultural change, it would almost be a tax neutral program. And we do a lot of work with the Canada Revenue Agency on our Get It in Writing program to really combat the underground economy. The biggest thing that we see drives the underground economy is a sense from Canadians that they're being unfairly taxed. And in places where we've seen increases even in the HST, you automatically see increases in underground economy. So I think it's really important.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off on this one. I was saying, I do apologize, but have you said that people are tempted to go underground economy because they feel to be overly taxed?
Oh, absolutely. It's
so because they have usual tax that everybody pay, everyone is paying a GST or whatever income tax, all that, all the rate we know, considering the income tax that is not that high in Canada, they still feel that it's way too much taxed and therefore they have to go on the underground economy?
Yeah, our experience with Canadians is when they feel they're being overly taxed, they look to do cash jobs. And that includes, and that's also one of the biggest problems we have in terms of the underground economy is people willing to pay cash. It's not just the people who are accepting cash, it's Canadians who are willing to pay cash because they think they're getting a deal, right? The typical deal is a contractor in lots of businesses, not just residential construction, will say, you don't have to, I'll give you 15% off or whatever the combined tax federal provincial is. Meanwhile, they're probably saving about 40% on all their taxes, and homeowners are happy to pay that because they think they pay too much tax.
Have you evaluated, although it's very difficult because it's underground, have you evaluated the potential size of the market if all this unknown revenue would be declared? What kind of revenue we can get from that? And have you established what is, from your perspective, a reasonable taxation level?
Sorry, I missed the last part of the question.
Have you evaluated the size of the underground market so for us we can know what kind of revenue we can have out of it? And at the same time, your appreciation of what is a reasonable taxation level or tax level for your market, because you are apparently overly taxed?
I'm just passing on what Canadians feel in terms of what drives the underground economy. But in terms of the size of the underground economy...
From the market, from the construction business.
Just hold on, Mr. Lee. Quickly answer one short question from Mr. Dussault, and then we'll have to pack it in. Mr. Lee.
All right, so the underground economy is estimated in Canada at around 20 billion at least. The opportunity to bring it above board is very much a function of how we change cultural norms, because that's really what it comes down to.
20 billion. Mr. Dussault.
Juste très rapide parce que j'étais.
I'll be quick. I was surprised that was my next question for you, Mr. Lee. I was surprised that we hadn't yet talked about an eco-energy program that in provinces such as Quebec works very well, and it requires that contractors declare all of their activity. And members of the various professional builders associations require this as well, and consumers ask for receipts. And they must prove to the government that they've made whatever purchase they're claiming. You didn't necessarily mention this in your notes, but are you asking that this eco-energy program come back?
Retrofit program, and it's why we recommend the return of a renovation tax credit that would be aimed at energy efficiency, for example, would be based in similar ways on the EnerGuide rating system, which is very good. Getting labels on houses really helps people appreciate the value of energy efficiency. Our recommendation, rather than a grant program and instead doing it as a tax credit program, is simply because of the enforceability and because Canadians are much less likely to want to defraud Revenue Canada as opposed to getting a grant, and so the Revenue Canada approach has a lot of incentives in that sense, and easier to enforce, because if you defraud, you've done tax fraud, which is way different than, well, I got a grant and I might not have given you the entire truth. But in terms of its success in the underground economy and combating it, it's been excellent. So we'd be very supportive of a return of that type of thing.
Very last question. We're 5 minutes late start and very short. Mr. Poilievre.
Mr. Lee, you mentioned that higher taxes generally lead to a bigger black market in the home renos and construction. Do you believe that these latest proposed tax increases on small business owners may have that effect as well?
Absolutely, unfortunately, and we hear about it. We have a major campaign in our association to help our members fight against their competitors who deal in the black market, but there's no question, and we see it all the time. As I said, when taxes go up in the different provinces, there's an immediate reaction of the underground economy going up.
Okay, just on the underground economy, if members want to test it out, that it's there, I'd suggest all you need to do, I've had it happen to me, all you need to do is put out an offer that you want to fix your roof or paint your house and go to 3 contactors, and I would imagine you'll be, or individuals, you'll be made an offer. And it is something that we do need to address. Just to inform panelists, we did get into the small business tax, which we expected, but I want to remind people that the consultations are ongoing. They go on to October 2nd. Make sure you get your information into the Department of Finance, and we as a committee are going to hold hearings on this next week as well, in addition to pre-budget consultations. There will be a button on our website for you to put whatever information and concerns you have to the Finance Committee as well, and that also will be transferred to the Department of Finance. We'll not make recommendations, but we will submit what people submit to us. With that then, thank you very much for your presentations and your brief before that, and thank members for their questions. Meeting adjourned.